Detroit winters had a way of swallowing sound, softening the world beneath layers of white while sharpening its harshest truths. Snow drifted across the streets like scattered ashes from a long quiet fire, coating sidewalks, rooftops, and abandoned bus stops. But inside the Miles family's cramped apartment on the east side, winter wasn't gentle. Winter was an enemy that seeped into the walls, slipped beneath thin blankets, and reminded 13-year-old Kendra Miles that childhood had no place here. The thermostat had broken weeks before, not that it mattered. Nobody had paid the heating bill long enough for the utility company to care. Frost crawled along the windows like cracked veins, and every breath became a puff of visible air. The fridge hummed weakly, holding almost nothing: a half-empty jug of water, 2 slices of stale bread, and an apple with a bruise that spread deeper every day. But across the room, curled beneath a worn cartoon blanket, slept Joy, Kendra's 6-year-old sister. Her little fists were tucked under her chin the way she did when she was trying to stay warm. The sight of her shivering even in sleep tightened something inside Kendra's chest. She pulled her own threadbare hoodie tighter around her arms and quietly crossed the room. A corner of the blanket had slipped off Joy's shoulder. With gentle fingers, Kendra tucked it back around her and whispered, "It's okay. I'm right here." It was a promise she had been making since she was 8 years old, long before she understood how big the world really was. And long before she realized that her childhood happiness would be sacrificed to protect the small, fragile girl now deep in sleep. Outside, the wind moaned through the broken kitchen window frame. The glass had cracked during one of their mother's fights with her boyfriend months ago, but no one ever fixed it. Some nights, the wind sounded like a ghost clawing to get inside. Other nights, it sounded like the warning of something worse. Kendra tiptoed to the window and stuffed another strip of cloth into the gap, trying to block the icy air. Her hands were numb, but she pushed through it. She always did. At school, kids her age worried about TikTok dances and new sneakers. But for her, mornings began with calculating how much food was left, whether it was safe to sleep through the night, and whether their mother would come home angry, sick, or not at all. That morning had started like most others, uncertain. Their mother, Tasha, had slipped out the night before without a word. She often said she'd be right back. She rarely was. Sometimes she returned with trembling hands and glassy eyes, draped over the shoulder of her boyfriend, Daryl. Other times she came home alone, crying in a voice that sounded unfamiliar even to herself. Kendra had learned not to expect a goodbye, or an apology. She checked the time on the cheap digital clock she'd found in a thrift store bin months ago. 6:11 a.m. Soon the city buses would begin their morning rumble, and she needed to get Joy ready for school. No matter what happened at home, she refused to let Joy fall behind. School was warm. School had lunch. School had teachers who smiled at Joy like she mattered. And that meant everything. She knelt beside her sister, brushing light curls from her forehead. "Joy," she whispered softly. "Baby, wake up." Joy stirred, blinking sleepily. "Is it morning already?" "Yes. Come on. Let's get dressed before it gets colder." Joy pushed herself upright, dragging the blanket around her shoulders like a tiny cape. Her smile tried to appear, but her lips were stiff from the cold. "Did Mama come home last night?" The question hung in the air like a ghost. Kendra forced a small smile. "Not yet. But she'll come back. She always said that." She didn't always believe it. She helped Joy step into a pair of leggings and a faded long-sleeve shirt. When Joy's teeth began chattering, Kendra wrapped a scarf around her neck, one she had found months earlier on the ground outside a gas station. Whoever dropped it never came back for it, and Kendra didn't feel guilty keeping it. Detroit streets gave what they could. With Joy dressed, she moved to the living room and grabbed their backpacks. Joy's was decorated with peeling butterfly stickers. Kendra's was plain black, stitched in 3 different places from where she had repaired it with dollar store thread. "Do we have breakfast?" Joy asked hopefully. The question twisted something inside her. Kendra opened the fridge and took out the bruised apple. It wasn't enough for both of them, but she sliced it in half with a small kitchen knife and placed the pieces into Joy's hands. "You eat," she said. Joy frowned. "But what about you?" "I'm okay. I'll get something at school." That was a lie. She rarely ate breakfast or lunch at school. Kids talked. Teachers noticed. It was easier to pretend she wasn't hungry than to answer questions she didn't want anyone asking. After Joy finished her half apple, they slipped on their coats, too thin for winter but all they had, and stepped outside. The cold punched them immediately. Their boots crunched through snow as they walked down Connor Street, passing graffiti-tagged walls, boarded buildings, and cars buried beneath ice like sleeping beasts. In the distance, the horizon glowed with the faint orange of a rising sun. Joy reached for her sister's hand. "Do you think Mama will be home when we get back?" "I hope so," Kendra said honestly. But hope didn't warm hands. Hope didn't pay bills. Hope didn't stop the things that happened in the dark. When they reached the bus stop, Kendra wiped snow off the bench and sat with Joy huddled against her side. A woman waiting nearby glanced at them, frowning at the sight of two young girls alone. "You two out here by yourselves? Where's your mama?" Kendra stiffened. "She's at work." It came out quickly. Too quickly. But the woman simply nodded and looked away. Detroit had a habit of minding its own business. Sometimes for better. Often for worse. When the bus arrived, they climbed inside, grateful for the brief warmth. Joy pressed her forehead against the window, watching white clouds of steam rise from the exhaust. At the next stop, a group of middle schoolers boarded. They laughed loudly, pushing each other, showing off brand new gloves and winter hats. Kendra lowered her gaze. She didn't want pity. She didn't want questions. She didn't want to be seen. Her stomach growled quietly, and she pressed her hands against it to silence the sound. Detroit flashed by outside, snow-covered gas stations, corner stores with fogged windows, churches with signs warning about the cold snap. A billboard advertising Hail Dynamics gleamed above the highway. A man in a gray suit stared down from the poster with a confident smile. She didn't know it yet, but that face would soon change everything about her life. The bus jerked to a stop outside Benjamin Carson Middle School. Kendra squeezed Joy's shoulder. "You're getting picked up right after school, okay? Don't go anywhere without me." "I won't," Joy said, smiling up at her. They parted ways, Joy crossing the street to her elementary school, Kendra heading toward the double doors of her own building. As she walked inside, warm air brushed her face for the first time that morning. The sudden comfort made her eyes sting. She wiped them quickly. No one could see her breaking. The day had barely begun, and already something inside her whispered that it would be harder than usual. She didn't know why. She didn't know what was coming. But she would soon. Because by the end of that day she would face a kind of cold no winter could match. And a stranger would step into her life in a way she never expected. A stranger who would change everything. The warm hallway of Benjamin Carson Middle School was supposed to feel comforting, but to Kendra it felt like another world she didn't quite belong to. Students crowded the lockers, laughing, complaining about homework, or trading snacks they didn't want. Their voices blended into a noisy blur as she walked through them like a quiet shadow. She kept her hood up, hugging her backpack to her chest. The school smelled of cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee from the teacher's lounge, another reminder of what she didn't have waiting at home. Kids brushed past her, some nodding politely, most not noticing her at all. Kendra preferred it that way. She stopped at her locker and spun the dial. The lock stuck as it always did. She yanked it twice before it finally gave way. Inside sat a few notebooks, a pencil stub, and an old binder with the edges peeling. Her teachers always told her she was capable, smart, responsible for her age. They didn't understand why she never smiled, or why she always seemed tired. If only they knew. She grabbed her books for first period just as the bell shrieked through the halls. Students rushed around her like waves washing past a rock. She moved slowly, deliberately, conserving energy the way someone twice her age might. When she reached the classroom, Mr. Thompson was already writing on the board. He was one of the few teachers who still greeted kids every morning like it mattered. "Good morning, Kendra," he said with a warm nod. "Morning," she replied quietly. He paused, studying her just a moment longer. "Everything okay today?" "Yeah." The lie fell effortlessly. She'd practiced it for years. But Mr. Thompson didn't push. He simply smiled, though a small crease formed between his eyebrows. He saw more than most people did. Kendra slid into her seat near the back. The chair wobbled slightly, but she didn't mind. It was stable enough, more stable than her life outside those walls. The lesson started, but her mind drifted. Her hand rested on her stomach as another hunger pang twisted inside her. She pressed her elbow into her side, hoping to dull the ache. She could survive until lunch. She always did. But she needed to save as much food as possible for Joy, and that meant pretending she wasn't hungry. Halfway through class, a girl named Raina whispered, "Kendra, you okay? You look pale." Kendra forced a small smile. "Didn't sleep much." "You never do," Raina answered softly. There was no judgment in her voice, just concern. But concern still scared Kendra. Concern meant questions. And questions meant the truth might spill out. The truth had consequences she couldn't risk. She turned her attention back to the board, scribbling notes swiftly. Her handwriting was neat, almost too neat. Another habit born from trying to maintain control in a world where she had none. When the bell rang, she stood too quickly. A wave of dizziness washed over her, forcing her to grip the side of her desk. She blinked through it until the room stopped spinning. Mr. Thompson noticed immediately. "Kendra?" "I'm okay," she said again, steadying herself. "Just stood up too fast." His gaze lingered, filled with worry. But she left the room before he could speak again. In the hallway she slowed her pace. Her hands trembled slightly, cold mixed with hunger mixed with exhaustion. She rubbed them together, blowing warm air onto her fingers. She made it through second period the same way she made it through most days, quiet, focused, invisible. But during third period, her mind kept drifting back to Joy. Was she warm? Was her classroom heated properly? Had she eaten all her apple? Was she scared because their mother was still missing? By lunchtime, Kendra felt the ache in her chest tightening. She sat alone at a corner table, the same spot she chose daily. When her tray slid into her hands, she stared at the food for a long moment. Chicken nuggets, mashed potatoes, a roll. She took exactly 2 bites of the food on her tray. Then she discreetly slid the nuggets and bread into her backpack. She would give them to Joy later. As long as Joy was okay, she could push through anything. Hunger didn't matter. Tiredness didn't matter. Fear didn't matter. But Joy mattered. During her last class of the day, the intercom crackled. "Students, a reminder that the temperature will drop below freezing tonight. Make sure to dress warm when you leave the building." A cold shiver ran through her. The apartment had been freezing last night. If the temperature dropped further, she didn't know what she would do. She checked her phone during a bathroom break. No messages from her mother. No missed calls. Nothing. She texted anyway. "Mom, where are you? Joy is asking about you. Please come home." 3 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 30. Still nothing. After school, she rushed across the street to pick up Joy. The elementary school was buzzing with noise. Parents greeting kids, teachers dismissing classes, children running toward buses lined up in the parking lot. Joy spotted her immediately. "Kendra." Kendra bent down, hugging her tightly. "How was school today?" "We made snowflakes with glitter." Joy held up a piece of paper with sparkling edges. "And Miss Parker said if we're good tomorrow, we get hot chocolate." "That's great," Kendra said, smiling at the excitement in her voice. Joy seemed okay. For now. They walked toward the bus stop as evening shadows grew longer. The cold wind pushed against them, sharper now, warning of the night ahead. "Did Mama text you?" Joy asked quietly. Kendra shook her head. "Not yet. But she's coming home, right?" "She'll come when she can," Kendra said. It was the closest she could get to the truth without crushing her. They boarded the bus, sitting beside each other. Did anyone else see the fear inside her? Or did she hide it that well? Snow began falling again, swirling like dust in headlights. The sky dimmed. Streetlights flickered awake. As they rode, Kendra held Joy close, trying to absorb her warmth. Her mind raced. If their mother didn't come home tonight and the apartment got colder, she would need to do something. Find help. Find heat. Find safety. But where could a 13-year-old go? When their stop finally approached, they stepped off into the growing darkness. Their footsteps crunched through snow, the sound too loud in the empty street. As they neared their apartment, Joy tugged on her sleeve. "Kendra, look." Kendra followed her gaze and her breath caught. Their front door was cracked open. A thin line of darkness yawned inside the apartment. No movement. No sound. No lights. Joy clutched Kendra's arm. "Is Mama home?" Kendra swallowed, her heart pounding. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. She reached out slowly, pushing the door open by an inch. Cold air rushed out at them like a warning. Joy whispered, trembling, "Kendra, is someone inside?" The door creaked, and what they saw in the shadows made Kendra freeze where she stood. The door swung open slowly, revealing the dim interior of the Miles family apartment. A faint smell of smoke mixed with stale food hit Kendra first, making her stomach twist. Joy pressed herself closer, her tiny hands clutching Kendra's arm as if holding on to her lifeline. The apartment was darker than usual. The single overhead bulb flickered, casting uneven shadows across the cracked walls. The heating system was off again, and the cold bit through their coats, making the girls shiver. Kendra's heart pounded. She scanned the living room with a mix of dread and determination. "Joy, stay close," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but she forced calm into every word. She couldn't let fear show, not now. The couch was covered with discarded clothing, fast food wrappers, and the remnants of yesterday's dinner. Kendra's eyes fell on the small kitchen counter, and her stomach clenched. The half-empty milk carton had been left out, sour and smelling faintly rancid. She closed her eyes briefly and tried not to think about the nights she and Joy went without food, swallowing hunger into a hollow pit of worry and responsibility. Her thoughts drifted to Tasha Miles, their mother. Where was she this time? Missing again. Kendra had lost count of the days, weeks, maybe. Her mother had disappeared into whatever darkness gripped her. Sometimes she called, sometimes she didn't. Sometimes she promised she'd be home. The promises were always empty. And then there was Daryl, Tasha's boyfriend. A shadow that haunted every room they lived in. Tall, loud, unpredictable, and violent when angered. He came and went like a storm, leaving fear and bruises in his wake. Kendra's mind raced with the knowledge that he could be anywhere in the apartment, or worse, approaching them at any moment. She had learned to anticipate every creak, every sudden noise, every footstep on the cracked linoleum floor. Kendra held Joy's hand tightly, leading her toward the kitchen. "We'll check for food," she said softly, trying to make her voice sound casual. Joy nodded, her eyes wide, trust evident in her gaze. Kendra wanted to believe everything would be okay, but years of experience had taught her that in their home, okay was a fragile illusion. The kitchen was a small rectangle with peeling linoleum and a rusted sink. Kendra opened the refrigerator carefully, half expecting it to be empty again. There was a loaf of bread, mold already beginning to form, a few bruised apples, and an almost empty jar of peanut butter. It wasn't enough for a proper meal, but it was something. She quickly gathered what she could, placing it into a small plastic bag to ration later. As she turned to leave the kitchen, a sudden noise froze her in place. The sound was faint at first, a low thud like something heavy being dropped. Her pulse quickened. She motioned for Joy to stay behind her. "It's probably nothing," she whispered, though she didn't believe her own words. The noise repeated, louder this time, echoing through the small apartment. Kendra's stomach dropped. She knew that sound. It was Daryl. Her mind raced. She had rehearsed for this countless times in the past. "I'd protect Joy. Don't cry. Don't scream. Don't give him any reason to notice." But in her gut, she knew hiding might not be enough tonight. Joy whimpered. "Kendra, is he coming?" "Shoo," Kendra said, pressing a finger to her lips. Her other hand gripped a small kitchen knife she kept hidden in her pocket. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The shadows in the apartment grew longer as Daryl's footsteps grew louder. Kendra could hear the scrape of shoes against linoleum, the dull thump of his weight as he moved closer. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but where could they go? The apartment was tiny and the front door was too close. Daryl's voice boomed suddenly, rough and drunk, cutting through the silence. "Tasha, you in here?" Kendra's heart skipped a beat. Her mother wasn't answering. The room was still. The silence made the threat feel heavier. Kendra crouched slightly, holding Joy behind her, and whispered, "Stay quiet. Don't move." Daryl's footsteps stopped just outside the kitchen. The doorframe creaked under his weight. Kendra could feel Joy trembling against her side. Her sister's small, warm body was the only thing keeping her steady. She had to think fast. She took a deep breath, the kind that steadied her shaking hands, and stepped into the doorway. Daryl's bloodshot eyes met hers, and the air between them seemed to thicken. Well, look who we got here," he slurred, trying to sound threatening. "You two think this is your home? Think you're in charge?" Kendra's mind raced. She couldn't run. She couldn't fight him alone. But she could distract him. She needed him focused on her, not Joy. "Daryl, please," she said, voice trembling but steady enough to carry authority she didn't feel. "I'm just trying to make sure Joy doesn't get hurt. Please don't scare her." Daryl laughed, a harsh, cruel sound that scraped along the walls. "Make sure she doesn't get hurt? Who made you the boss?" The room seemed to shrink. Kendra could feel her pulse in her throat. Her hands shook around the knife, though she kept it hidden. She knew a single mistake could ruin everything. And then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang, once sharply, cutting through the tension. Daryl froze, momentarily distracted. Kendra seized the moment. "Go check it," she said softly to Joy. "See who it is." Joy hesitated, glancing up at Kendra. "What if it's him?" Kendra shook her head firmly. "Go. Now." With trembling legs, Joy crept toward the front door and peered through the peephole. Her eyes widened. "Kendra, there's a car outside. And there's a man. He looks different." Daryl turned toward the door instinctively, curiosity mixing with anger. Kendra took a step back, protecting Joy with her body. The man outside was tall, wearing a dark gray coat, standing by a sleek black SUV. He looked out of place on the cracked Detroit street, a figure of calm and authority. His gaze swept toward the building, scanning the area carefully. There was something about him that made Daryl hesitate, something that even Kendra could feel. Joy whispered, barely audible, "Kendra, he looks rich." Kendra swallowed hard. Her mind raced. Could this man help them? Should she take the risk? She had never trusted anyone outside of their small circle, not even adults she didn't know. But right now they had no choice. Daryl, noticing the man outside, cursed under his breath. He stomped toward the door. "Who the hell is that?" he muttered, opening the front door slightly to get a better look. And then, without warning, the man outside spoke, his voice firm and commanding. "Hey, are the girls okay?" Kendra froze. She didn't recognize the voice, but it carried a weight she couldn't ignore. Her instincts screamed at her that this was someone who could change everything. Daryl scowled, stepping forward. "Who the hell are you talking to?" The man didn't flinch. He lifted his hands slightly, palms open, in a gesture of peace. "I'm asking about the girls inside. Are they safe?" Kendra's heart raced. She looked down at Joy, whose small hands clutched hers tightly. She had to make a choice: stay hidden, or trust this stranger with the one chance they had to escape the danger that had consumed their lives for so long. Daryl's eyes narrowed, suspicion and anger mixing into a volatile storm. He took a step closer. Kendra felt the room shrink around her, the walls closing in. And then, Joy tugged at her sleeve and whispered, trembling, "Kendra, please, help me." Kendra took a deep breath, her mind made up. Whatever happened next, she could no longer keep running. The moment had come to act. She stepped forward and opened her mouth, ready to speak. The next moment would change everything for Kendra and Joy, introducing the stranger who would alter their lives forever. The next morning, Kendra dragged herself out of bed with the weight of the previous night pressing down on her. She had barely slept, listening for every creak, every sound that might signal danger. Joy had clung to her like a lifeline through the darkness, and even in the thin, flickering light of their apartment, Kendra had felt a small spark of hope, strangely because of the stranger she'd glimpsed outside their building. His calm authority and concern had etched itself into her mind. For the first time in a long while, she wondered if someone beyond her could actually help. But for now, reality waited. Breakfast was a silent affair. Kendra had pulled what remained from the fridge, half a loaf of bread, some peanut butter, and a few bruised apples. She divided it evenly between herself and Joy. Joy ate quietly, her eyes bright but weary, sensing Kendra's tension. The older sister felt a familiar knot in her chest tighten. How many mornings like this could they endure before something broke completely? After coaxing Joy into her coat, Kendra made sure her sister's backpack was snug and the scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. The streets were already alive with early commuters, buses, and children on their way to school. The snow had stopped, but the wind still carried a sharp bite. They walked together, side by side, crossing the intersection that led to Benjamin Carson Middle School and the elementary school where Joy attended. Kendra's mind replayed the encounter from last night. That man outside. His presence had felt like a lifeline dangling just within reach. She didn't know who he was, but she couldn't shake the sense that he had been there for a reason. Maybe fate, maybe luck, maybe something else entirely. Once Kendra dropped Joy off, she moved toward her own school, her steps slower than usual. Her stomach churned with anxiety, not from hunger this time, but from the anticipation of what the day might bring. She had grown skilled at hiding her home life from teachers and classmates alike. That skill had been honed over years, carefully perfected, and yet every day carried the risk of exposure. Inside the school, the familiar hum of students, lockers, and fluorescent lights greeted her. She kept her hood up and her head low, letting the crowd carry her along without noticing. She was adept at invisibility. Until she wasn't. Mr. Thompson noticed. He had a habit of watching her from the corner of his eye, quietly observing more than just her class participation. Today, as Kendra slid into her desk, she caught his gaze, and it lingered longer than usual. There was concern there, a mix of professional duty and genuine care. After taking attendance, he spoke quietly without making it obvious. "Kendra, can I see you for a moment after class?" Kendra's stomach tightened. Every adult who asked for a private word was a potential threat to her carefully constructed shield. She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," she murmured, her voice barely audible. She spent the next hour in class, listening but not hearing. Her thoughts were consumed with the events of last night. The broken door. Daryl. The stranger outside. A flicker of hope mixed with fear settled deep in her chest. Finally the bell rang. Students filed out, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the silent storms happening in the lives of kids like Kendra. She lingered until the hallway cleared, then approached Mr. Thompson's desk. "Sit," he said quietly. "I want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," she said automatically. It was the answer she gave to every question like this. He studied her, his eyes softening. "Kendra, you don't have to lie to me. I can tell something's going on. You're carrying more than someone your age should have to carry." She shook her head, refusing to meet his gaze. "I'm fine. Really. Listen," he said gently, lowering his voice further. "If there's anything at all, that you need help with, I want you to tell me. You don't have to face it alone." Kendra's throat tightened. She had rehearsed this conversation hundreds of times in her head, always finding ways to protect Joy and keep their life secret. But something in his tone, earnest, patient, unwavering, made her hesitate. She swallowed, trying to push down the lump forming in her throat. I just want to make sure Joy is okay. That's all." Mr. Thompson nodded, but his frown deepened. He could see through her deflection, and he didn't like what he saw. "You shouldn't have to carry that alone," he said softly. "If you ever need me, I'll be here." Kendra forced a small nod, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief because she had someone on her side. Anxiety because acknowledging help meant opening a door she had always kept shut. The rest of the day passed in a blur of lessons and muted hall chatter. Kendra noticed herself drifting in and out of focus, her thoughts repeatedly returning to the question that had been gnawing at her since the night before. Who was the man outside? What had he meant when he looked so concerned for her and Joy? By the time the final bell rang, Kendra was exhausted. She retrieved Joy from the elementary school, the younger girl skipping slightly despite the chill, clutching a piece of glittered paper from class. Joy's laughter was bright, but Kendra's chest ached with the weight of her worries. As they approached the bus stop, Kendra's phone buzzed. A notification popped up, text from an unknown number. She hesitated, fingers trembling, before opening it. Are the girls okay? I saw them last night. Call me if you need help. No name. No number she recognized. Her heart raced. Could it be him? The man outside last night? Before she could decide what to do, a shadow fell across the sidewalk. Kendra looked up and her stomach sank. Daryl was standing there, leaning casually against a car, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, a sneer curling his lips. His eyes swept the street, lingering on the girls. Kendra instinctively stepped in front of Joy, shielding her from view. Her mind raced. Should she run? Should she hide? Should she confront him? Going somewhere? Daryl's voice was low and dangerous. Kendra's legs trembled. Joy's small hands clutched hers tightly, and the younger girl whispered, Kendra, I'm scared. She had no choice. Not tonight. Not ever. She had learned the hard way that fear alone was never enough to protect them. They needed help, real help, and she had a faint memory of someone offering it. She glanced at her phone again. The message still stared back at her. One number. One unknown chance. Kendra swallowed. Her mind made up. Whatever the risk, she had to reach out. Her fingers dialed the number carefully, hands shaking. She pressed call and held the phone tightly to her ear. A deep voice answered almost immediately. Come. Firm. Certain. Hello. Kendra froze. It was him. The stranger from the night before. The one who had looked out for them. Her heart pounded. She barely managed to speak. I think we need help, please. On the other end, the man's voice didn't waver. Where are you? I'll be there right away. Kendra looked up at Daryl, who was stepping closer, suspicion and menace written across his face. Her pulse spiked, and she felt the weight of responsibility press down on her again. She had to protect Joy, and she had to survive this. Then, a sound that made her stomach twist. The engine of a car, smooth and powerful, rolling to a stop nearby. The black SUV she remembered from the night before glinted under the streetlight. The doors opened. A figure stepped out, tall, imposing and calm. Daryl's smirk faltered. His eyes narrowed. Kendra felt a surge of hope but also fear. She had no idea what would happen next. But she knew one thing with certainty. Nothing would ever be the same after this moment. The man from last night has arrived. But will he save them, or will Daryl strike first? Kendra's life is about to change forever. The black SUV's engine hummed quietly against the icy Detroit street, a stark contrast to the tension gripping Kendra's chest. The man stepped out, his tall frame sharp in the dim streetlight. His eyes, calm yet commanding, swept over the small figure of Daryl. The older man's sneer faltered for just a moment, but the aura of authority radiating from the stranger was enough to make him hesitate. Kendra instinctively moved in front of Joy, protecting her. She didn't know this man. She didn't know whether to trust him. But something about the way he held himself, steady, unflinching, like a pillar in the middle of a storm, made her believe that he could help. Daryl's lips twisted in anger. Who are you supposed to be? He spat, stepping closer. I'm someone who's not going to let you hurt them, the man said, his voice even and precise. He didn't raise it, yet every word carried weight. Step back. For a moment, Detroit's bitter wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. Daryl's eyes flickered between the man and the girls. The street was quiet, empty except for them, but the tension was palpable, almost unbearable. Kendra's throat tightened. Her mind raced. Could this man really protect them? Could someone finally step in and shield them from the danger that had shadowed their lives for so long? Daryl snarled but stepped back slightly, his instincts telling him that this stranger wasn't ordinary. Kendra could see the fear flicker briefly in his eyes. That fear was all she needed to give her a fragile sense of hope. The stranger's gaze softened when it shifted to Kendra and Joy. Are you two okay? He asked, his tone gentle now, almost hesitant, as if approaching someone too fragile to bear harshness. Kendra swallowed, shaking. We're fine, she managed, though her voice wavered. The man knelt slightly to meet her eyes, maintaining a calm intensity. I'm Christopher Hale. I saw what happened last night. I want to help. Kendra blinked, confused. His name sounded formal, unfamiliar. But it was his tone, the certainty behind it, that cut through the fear twisting her chest. Joy clung to her sister's side. Are you going to take us somewhere safe?" she whispered, tiny voice trembling. Christopher nodded. "Yes, right now. But I need to get you away from here quickly." Daryl's anger flared. He took another step forward, hand twitching as though reaching for something, anything. "You can't just take them," he growled. "They're mine. Their mother." "You don't get to touch them," Christopher interrupted, voice rising with quiet authority. He reached into his coat and pressed a button. The SUV's alarm blared suddenly, startling Daryl and drawing the attention of nearby neighbors. Within seconds, he seemed to decide discretion was better than confrontation. He cursed under his breath and retreated, melting back into the shadows. Kendra exhaled sharply, holding Joy closer. Her knees felt weak. The danger had passed, for now, but the realization of just how close they had come to disaster made her heart pound. Christopher extended a hand. "Come on. Let's get inside where it's warm." Kendra hesitated, scanning his face for any sign of deceit. There was none. Only calm, only determination, and an unmistakable sense of safety. She took his hand, guiding Joy toward the SUV. Inside, the car was warm, luxurious, and unlike anything Kendra had ever experienced. The leather seats smelled faintly of leather conditioner, and soft ambient lighting bathed the interior. Joy's eyes widened, her mouth slightly open. It's nice," she breathed. Kendra nodded, still wary. "Yeah, it is." Christopher glanced at them both in the rearview mirror, his expression softening. "I know you've had a rough night and likely a rough life. I want to help, but I need you to trust me." Kendra's chest tightened. Trust wasn't something she gave easily. But Christopher's presence, the way he handled Daryl without raising his voice or striking a blow, told her that he was different. The SUV glided through the streets of Detroit, passing rows of snow-dusted houses, closed corner stores, and flickering streetlights. Christopher drove silently, letting Kendra and Joy absorb the warmth, the unfamiliar sense of safety. Finally, they arrived at a tall building in a quieter neighborhood. The architecture was sleek, modern, and unlike the crumbling brick and concrete of the streets they had left behind. Christopher led them inside, the lobby bathed in soft light, a scent of fresh wood and cleanliness enveloping them. "This is Hale Haven," he explained. "It's a safe place. You'll be okay here." Kendra glanced around. The air was warm, almost too warm, and the walls were free of the decay and neglect that had been a constant in her life. It felt like stepping into another world, a world where the cold, the fear, the hunger, and the danger could be pushed far away. Christopher guided them to a small lounge area. "You can rest, eat, and warm up," he said, his eyes gentle but firm. "No one will hurt you here." Joy flopped onto one of the couches, her small frame sinking into the cushions. "It's nice," she repeated. A tiny smile crept across her face, tentative but genuine. Kendra stayed near her, running a hand over her sister's hair. She let herself relax slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing. For the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. Christopher walked to a nearby counter and brought over blankets, water, and snacks. "Eat something," he urged. "You both need it." Kendra hesitated, but hunger and exhaustion made the offer impossible to refuse. She took a granola bar, biting carefully while keeping an eye on Joy. The little girl was already munching on a small sandwich Christopher had provided. As they settled in, Kendra finally allowed herself to look at Christopher more closely. He wasn't just calm, there was a quiet strength about him, something born from experience, something that suggested he had known loss, responsibility, and perhaps even pain. His eyes carried a weight that Kendra could relate to, though she had never imagined meeting someone who could understand. Christopher noticed her gaze. "I know you've been through a lot," he said softly. "I won't lie to you, it won't all be easy. But we'll get through it. Together." Kendra wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the constant vigilance that had consumed her life for years. But part of her hesitated. Trusting someone meant opening a door she had long kept closed. One wrong choice and everything could fall apart. Minutes passed, the room quiet except for the occasional rustle of blankets or the soft clink of a water bottle. The tension in Kendra's chest began to ease just slightly. She felt the edges of fear soften, replaced by a cautious sense of security. Then Christopher's voice interrupted the calm. "There's something I need to tell you, something important about me." Kendra looked up, curiosity mixing with apprehension. "I've lost someone very important in my life," he continued, his tone heavy with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Someone I love deeply. It's left a void in me, a hole that never really heals. I see a lot of myself in you too, the fight to survive, the fear of losing someone you love. That's why I couldn't just walk by last night." Kendra's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond. It was strange hearing someone else speak of pain, of loss with such openness. It made her feel less alone. Christopher leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting to the window where the city lights flickered against the falling snow. "I don't know exactly what the future holds," he admitted. "But I do know this. I won't let anyone hurt you. Not now. Not ever." For a long moment, Kendra sat silently, the weight of his words settling around her like a protective shield. She realized that for the first time, someone truly saw them, not as burdens, not as invisible, not as problems, but as people worth caring about. Joy rested her head on Kendra's shoulder, sleep tugging at her eyelids. Kendra stroked her hair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. The warmth of the room, the safety of the place, and the presence of someone who cared, it was almost overwhelming. But just as she let herself relax, a sound made her freeze, a faint, deliberate tapping at the large glass doors near the entrance. Kendra's heart skipped. The shadows beyond the glass flickered. Christopher noticed her tension immediately. "What is it?" She shook her head slightly, her voice tight. I'm not sure." Outside, the tapping repeated, more insistent this time. A shadow loomed, larger than it should have been. Kendra gripped Joy's hand tightly. Christopher's eyes narrowed, a protective edge sharpening his features. "Stay here," he said firmly and moved toward the door. Kendra's chest tightened. Something was coming. Something, or someone, was not finished with them yet. A new threat approaches Hale Haven, and Kendra realizes that safety might be only temporary. Dallas had never seen a dining room so breathtaking. The chandelier hanging above the long walnut table looked like dripping gold, an elegant cascade of glass and light that reflected off every polished surface. The walls were lined with framed photographs, mountain landscapes, architectural marvels, and candid shots of smiling groups of people wearing safety helmets and construction vests. It was clear these weren't staged for display. They were memories, real ones, of a man who had lived an entirely different life long before wealth found him. Jenna sat at the table with her elbows tucked neatly at her sides, as she always did when she felt nervous. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Dallas could tell because Jenna's knuckles had turned white. She whispered across the table, her voice barely audible. "Do we even know which fork to use?" Dallas shook her head. "We'll figure it out. Just follow Mr. Caldwell." Jenna gave a tiny nod, though her eyes kept darting around, overwhelmed by the grandeur. When Mr. Caldwell strode into the room, he wasn't wearing his tailored suit anymore. Instead, he had changed into a simple navy sweater and dark jeans, still refined but surprisingly casual. He carried himself with ease, as though the room belonged to him simply because he lived in it, not because he owned it. "I hope you two like roasted chicken," he said with a warm smile. "My chef made it simple tonight. Nothing fancy." To Dallas, it looked incredibly fancy. Slices of golden roasted chicken arranged beside perfectly seasoned vegetables, small dishes of fresh bread with herb butter, and a fruit tart that looked like it belonged in a magazine. When the plates were placed before them, Jenna whispered, "This is simple?" Mr. Caldwell caught her tone and laughed softly. "Trust me, this is the least complicated meal my kitchen makes. When they start talking about truffle reductions and imported garnishes, even I get confused." Jenna's shoulders relaxed a little. Dallas offered a polite smile. "Thank you for inviting us. Not everyone would do this." His face shifted, kindness mixed with a shadow of something heavier. You'd be surprised what people will do if they stop long enough to notice what's happening right in front of them. He sat down across from them, then folded his hands. So, he began gently, I know the basics of where you were living, but I want to hear your full story. Only if you're comfortable. Dallas swallowed. Finally, things were moving toward the truth she knew would have to surface eventually. She nodded slowly. We grew up outside Nashville. Not a fancy place, just an old neighborhood with bad plumbing and worse neighbors. Our dad worked construction when he could, but he was sick a lot. Our mom, she left when Jenna was 6. After that, Dad tried, but everything got worse. Mr. Caldwell's eyes softened. I'm sorry. Jenna kept her gaze on her plate. We didn't want to lose the apartment. We tried everything, Dallas continued. But the bills were piling up, and the landlord decided he didn't care anymore. So we ended up at Foster's Community Center. It wasn't great, but it was better than the streets. And that's where I saw you, Mr. Caldwell finished. Dallas nodded. He leaned back in his chair. I want you to know something. You weren't wrong for what you did. Asking for help is one of the bravest things a person can do. People underestimate it. Jenna looked up finally. You didn't laugh at us. Why would I? He asked gently. Jenna shrugged. Most adults do. Or they pretend to care but then walk away. Mr. Caldwell's jaw tightened, barely noticeable, but Dallas caught it. Something about Jenna's words resonated with him deeper than she expected. You know, he said quietly, when I was younger than you two, I was in a shelter myself. Dallas froze. Even the air around them seemed to hold still. She stared at him. You were? He nodded, his eyes distant as though replaying old memories. My mother worked 2 jobs at a factory, but it wasn't enough. When she got hurt on the job, everything fell apart. We stayed in a shelter for almost a year. Dallas had expected him to share some vague hardship as a gesture of sympathy, but this was different. This felt raw, unfiltered, and incredibly human. How did you get out? Dallas asked softly. He exhaled, the memory heavy on his breath. A retired teacher who volunteered at the shelter saw potential in me. She helped me get into a scholarship program. One person's small kindness changed the entire direction of my life. Jenna's eyes widened. Like you're doing for us. Mr. Caldwell blinked, slowly, thoughtfully. I hope so. For a beat, the room was quiet except for the faint clinking of silverware. And then, something strange happened. Jenna tilted her head. Mr. Caldwell, why do you have pictures of kids in hard hats on your wall? He glanced back at the photos. Those are students. I fund a mentorship program for teens who want to learn engineering, architecture, or skilled trades. Dallas studied the walls again. There were dozens of faces, all smiling under bright construction lights. Kids of every background, every shade, every story. That's amazing, she said. It's personal, he replied. A way to give back. The moment felt sincere. Almost peaceful. But then, like a sudden cold breeze, Jenna asked the question neither of them expected. Are you helping us because you want to? Or because we remind you of you? Mr. Caldwell's fork paused midair. Dallas's stomach tightened. She whispered urgently, Jenna? No, he interrupted gently. It's a fair question. He set his fork down and folded his hands again, his expression thoughtful. I'm helping you because I choose to. But, he hesitated, maybe there is something about you two that feels familiar. And maybe part of me wishes someone had done more for us back then. His voice sounded honest. Too honest. And it made Dallas uneasy, though she didn't know why. Jenna nodded slowly, accepting the answer. But Dallas noticed something else. Every time he spoke about his past, he avoided mentioning one thing, his father. Not once. Not even a hint. Was strange. Almost deliberately missing. She filed that thought away, unsure yet if it mattered. After dinner, Mr. Caldwell excused himself briefly. Jenna drifted toward the wall of photographs, admiring them with innocent wonder. Dallas followed, then froze. Her eyes locked onto one particular photo. A teenage boy stood in the center of a construction site, holding a metal beam with a group of other teens. His expression was tired, but his smile was wide. It took a moment for her to recognize the familiar jawline, the same accent in the eyes. It was a young Mr. Caldwell, maybe 16 or 17. But next to him, a man stood with his hand on the boy's shoulder, wearing a volunteer badge. He looked older, maybe in his late 30s. Dallas leaned closer. Her pulse quickened. She had seen that man before. Not in person. Not anywhere obvious. But in a newspaper photo taped to the wall of the community center. A story about a volunteer who disappeared mysteriously years ago, leaving behind rumors, debts, and questions that were never answered. The same face. The same eyes. Same name under the photo. Harold Trent. Dallas felt the air drain from her lungs. Why was a missing volunteer standing in a photo beside a teenage Mr. Caldwell, inside Mr. Caldwell's own home? Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. Something wasn't adding up. Something wasn't right. Behind her, she heard footsteps returning. Mr. Caldwell's voice drifted toward her lightly. "Everything all right, Dallas?" She turned slowly, her breath shaky, because she had one terrifying thought. What if Mr. Caldwell wasn't telling them everything about his past? And what if the truth was far more dangerous than they realized? Dallas didn't sleep that night. While Jenna curled up under the soft duvet in the guest room, breathing peacefully for the first time in months, Dallas lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the photograph like a warning she couldn't ignore. Harold Trent. The missing volunteer whose name had been whispered around the community center like a ghost story. Some said he vanished while traveling. Others claimed he ran off after owing dangerous people money. A few believed something darker, something involving the very shelters he volunteered in. Dallas didn't know the truth, but she did know this. That man's face had no business appearing in a photograph inside Mr. Caldwell's home, and certainly not standing beside him like they knew each other well. As dawn broke, Dallas slipped out of bed quietly. She found Jenna still sleeping peacefully and decided not to wake her. With careful steps, Dallas followed the hallway toward the staircase, gripping the railing to steady the whirlwind inside her chest. When she reached the living room, she paused. Mr. Caldwell was already awake. He sat on the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, staring down at a steaming cup of coffee. His posture was stiff, tense, so unlike the calm composure he had displayed the previous day. It looked as if he had been awake all night too. He didn't notice her until she stepped fully into the room. "Morning," she said, trying to sound normal. "Morning," he replied quietly. His voice was rough, as if pulled from somewhere heavy. He gestured toward the counter. "There's breakfast if you want some." Dallas nodded but didn't move toward it. The silence grew thick between them, stretching across the room like a tight rope. She needed answers. She just didn't know how to ask without breaking the fragile trust forming between them. He finally lifted his gaze to her, sharp, unreadable. "You look like you didn't sleep." Dallas swallowed. "Neither did you." His jaw flexed slightly. "True." Another beat of silence. Dallas took a step closer. "Can I ask you something?" His posture stiffened a little, though he nodded. "Ask." She hesitated, then pushed forward. "The pictures in the dining room, who are all those people?" He exhaled slowly. "Kids from the mentorship program. Volunteers. People who helped me when I was younger." Her pulse quickened. The word volunteers echoed in her head. She wet her lips. "And the man standing next to you in one of the photos? The one with the badge that said Harold?" His expression changed instantly. A flicker of something, shock, fear, or grief, crossed his face before he buried it under a neutral mask. She finished quietly, "Harold Trent." The name landed between them like a stone dropped into deep water. Mr. Caldwell stared down at his coffee as though he couldn't bear to look at her. Dallas's heart thudded painfully. "You know him," she said. It wasn't a question. He leaned back, rubbing his thumb along the porcelain cup. "I haven't heard that name spoken in a long time." His voice sounded older somehow, more fragile. Dallas waited. He finally looked up. Harold wasn't just a volunteer. He was the closest thing I ever had to a father. The confession hit her like a sudden gust of wind. Her breath caught. He continued softly, "He met me when I was 14. I was angry at the world back then. I didn't trust anyone, But Harold, he saw past all that. He gave his time. He taught me how to work with steel, how to solve problems, how to believe that my circumstances didn't define me. Dallas's chest tightened. She hadn't expected that answer. He sighed. He believed in me more than I did. Dallas stepped closer. So, what happened to him? Mr. Caldwell stood abruptly and walked toward the large window, staring outside as if searching for the right words on the horizon. Harold disappeared when I was 18. No warning. No goodbye. Dallas felt a cold ripple spread across her arms. So the rumors? Rumors, he cut in sharply, are what people create when they can't face how complex real life is. His voice wavered, barely, but it was enough for Dallas to notice. Then quieter. I spent years looking for him. Years. Dallas blinked. You did. He nodded. I hired people. Investigators. Traveled myself. But every lead stopped halfway, like he had vanished off the face of the earth. Dallas's breath unsteady. And the photo, you kept it because he meant something to you. He closed his eyes for a moment. He was the reason I survived. The reason I tried. The reason I became who I am now. His pain was real. Undeniably real. Yet something still didn't match. If Harold meant that much, why hide his disappearance? Why act startled at the name? Why place the photo out in the open but never mention him until forced? Dallas wanted to believe him. But her gut screamed that the story wasn't complete. Before she could press further, Jenna appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Morning, she murmured, oblivious to the tension in the air. Mr. Caldwell instantly composed himself, his posture straightening, his expression smoothing into something calm and warm. Good morning, he said gently. Jenna smiled at him, trusting, grateful. Dallas watched their interaction with a knot forming in her stomach. She wasn't sure who she was protecting anymore. Herself, Jenna, or the man whose secrets were growing more tangled by the day. Later that morning, Mr. Caldwell insisted on giving them a tour of the estate grounds. Jenna practically skipped along the stone pathway, excitement bubbling through her with every step. Look at the gardens, she said. And the greenhouse. Mr. Caldwell smiled. You like plants? I love them, Jenna said. Then you'll love what's inside. He unlocked the greenhouse door and warm air washed over them, filled with the scent of fresh soil and blooming flowers. The space was alive with color, orchids, sunflowers, tropical vines climbing up lattices. Jenna wandered between the rows, her happiness glowing brighter than the overhead lights. Dallas followed more slowly, her attention divided between Jenna's joy and the shadows she sensed around Mr. Caldwell. He stood beside a table of seedlings, gently brushing soil off his hands. This was Harold's idea, he said quietly. He believed that caring for something living teaches people how to care for themselves. Dallas's breath hitched. She wasn't sure whether she believed him completely, but the way he spoke, soft, reverent, felt genuine. She found herself torn. Part of her wanted to trust him fully. Another part feared what she'd discover if she did. Jenna's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Dallas, look. They have strawberries. Dallas forced a smile and walked over. But as she did, she noticed something tucked beneath a potted fern beside the greenhouse door. A small laminated ID card. She knelt down and picked it up. Her stomach twisted. It was a worn visitor pass. Printed on the front, clear as day. Property access, guest, Harold Trent. Her hand trembled. Why was Harold's ID here? Had he been here, recently? She looked up slowly. Mr. Caldwell stood only a few feet away watching her. Not smiling. Not surprised. Just watching. Their eyes locked. And in that moment, Dallas felt the first true wave of fear. Something unspoken pulsed between them. Something that told her. Harold Trent may not be gone. And Mr. Caldwell may not be the man she thought he was. The greenhouse felt suddenly smaller, as though the warm, fragrant air had thickened around them. Dallas's fingers tightened around the laminated ID card. The edges dug into her skin, grounding her in a moment that felt unreal. She forced herself to speak. What is this? She asked, holding up the card. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Mr. Caldwell stepped closer, slow and controlled, too controlled. "That," he said calmly, "is an old visitor pass. I've been meaning to throw it out." Dallas knew he was lying. Not because he sounded nervous, he didn't. Not because he stuttered, he never did. But because when their eyes met, his held something unmistakable. A warning. Before she could reply, Jenna rushed over, completely unaware of the silent tension. "What's that, Dallas?" Dallas quickly slipped the card behind her back. "Nothing important." But Mr. Caldwell's gaze flicked toward her hand anyway. His voice softened. "Jenna, why don't you check out the lemon trees? They're right over there." Jenna nodded eagerly and ran off, humming. Dallas seized the moment. "Why do you still have this?" she whispered sharply. He exhaled, long and patient, as if dealing with a nervous child rather than a teenager with valid questions. "I told you, Harold was important to me. I kept a few of his things. That pass must have fallen from an old box." His tone eased, warmed, almost convincing, but his eyes remained cold. Something wasn't right. Dallas scanned the greenhouse nervously and saw a small metal cabinet near the back wall, locked tight. The kind of cabinet that looked like it stored things no one else was supposed to see. Her heartbeat thudded faster. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone Harold was connected to you?" she asked. His jaw tensed. "Because people turned his disappearance into a spectacle. They made assumptions. Ugly ones." "Like what?" "That I was involved," he said bluntly. Dallas froze. He stepped closer, voice steady. "And before you let your imagination run away, no, I had nothing to do with Harold vanishing. But the rumors damaged me anyway. The more successful I became, the more people whispered." Dallas swallowed hard. "Then why keep his ID hidden in a greenhouse?" He raised a brow. "You think I'm hiding it?" "You didn't leave it in the open," she countered. His reply came faster than she expected. "I also didn't put it in a vault. It's a visitor pass, not proof of anything." It was the first time his composure cracked. Not enough to reveal true anger, but enough to show irritation rising beneath the surface. He took a slow breath. "Dallas, you're tired. Overwhelmed. I get it. But don't twist things into something they're not." She clenched the card tighter. "I'm not twisting anything," she said quietly. "I'm asking you for the truth." He paused. For a long moment he simply stared at her. Really stared, like he was trying to assess whether she had become a threat or still someone worth protecting. And then he said something that chilled her. "Sometimes," he murmured, "the truth isn't safe." Dallas's breath caught. "Safe for who?" He didn't answer. Jenna's laughter broke through the tension as she ran back toward them holding a lemon in both hands. "Look, it smells so good." Mr. Caldwell instantly shifted back into the warm guardian figure he had been since they first met. "Careful with it. They're ripe." Jenna beamed. Dallas stayed silent, watching the transformation with unease. How did he switch roles so effortlessly? How could someone be both comforting and terrifying in the same minute? They left the greenhouse soon after, but the tension followed them back into the house like an invisible shadow. By lunchtime, Dallas felt stretched thin. Jenna chatted happily about the gardens and how she wished they could grow plants someday. Mr. Caldwell nodded along, humoring her with soft smiles. Dallas barely touched her food. Her mind wasn't at the table. It was trapped in the photograph pinned to the dining room wall. In the visitor pass tucked into the greenhouse dirt. In the half-truths, missing pieces, and warnings disguised as kindness. After lunch, Mr. Caldwell stood and stretched lightly. "I need to take a business call. The two of you can relax here. The game room is down the hall." Jenna jumped up excitedly. "Can we play something?" "Anything you want," he said with a smile. But Dallas saw it again, the flicker behind the smile. A sliver of stress. A note of caution. As soon as he left the room, Jenna grabbed Dallas's wrist. "Come on. He has a bowling game. And a racing simulator." Dallas managed a weak smile. "I'll catch up with you in a second." Jenna darted down the hallway. Dallas waited until she heard the distant sound of games booting up. Then she moved. Her steps were silent as she made her way toward the dining room. The air felt heavier the closer she got, like she was walking toward something she already regretted. She stood before the wall of photographs again, scanning each image slowly. Her gaze halted at the one with Harold and young Mr. Caldwell. Now that she knew the name behind the face, the photo felt different. Darker. More ominous. She reached up and gently lifted the frame off the wall. The backing was tightly sealed, professional. But when she lightly pressed her fingers against the corner, she noticed the edge wasn't perfectly flush, as if someone had removed and replaced the back more than once. So she slid her nail very gently under the corner. It popped open with a soft click. Her pulse quickened. Behind the photo lay something she hadn't expected. A second picture. Hidden. Older. Faded. She pulled it out carefully. It showed Harold again, but this time standing next to a younger woman holding a clipboard. They were inside a shelter office, both smiling brightly. But someone had drawn a thick line through the woman's face, blocky and dark, like they wanted her erased. Dallas frowned. On the back of the picture was messy handwriting. 3 words. She found out. Dallas's blood ran cold. She stared at the words, trying to breathe, trying to understand. Found out what? About Harold? About Caldwell? About something else entirely? Footsteps echoed suddenly from the hallway. Coming closer. Slow. Deliberate. Dallas's heart jumped into her throat. She shoved the hidden photo back behind the framed one, slid everything together quickly, wiped any prints from the glass, and rehung it perfectly on the wall. The footsteps grew louder. She stepped back just as Mr. Caldwell appeared in the doorway. He stopped when he saw her. His expression unreadable. "Dallas," he said quietly, "what are you doing in here?" She swallowed, forcing her voice to steady. "Just looking at the pictures again." He studied her for a long, painful moment. "Too long." "So," he said slowly, "you're curious." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A warning. Dallas held her ground. "Pictures tell stories." His eyes narrowed the slightest bit. "Yes," he murmured. "And some stories are better left alone." The air between them tightened, thick with unspoken threats and unanswered questions. Before she could react, he stepped aside. "I want to talk to you later," he said. "Just you." Her stomach flipped painfully. "Why?" she asked. He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because you're asking the right questions." He turned and walked away, his footsteps fading down the hall. Dallas stood frozen, heart pounding wildly. She had wanted answers. But now she feared the truth might be far more dangerous than she ever imagined. The house was quieter now. Jenna had disappeared down the hall into the game room, her laughter and shouts echoing faintly through the high ceilings. Dallas lingered in the hallway outside the dining room, still clutching the photograph she had found hidden behind the frame. Her stomach churned with questions that demanded answers. Harold Trent. The visitor pass. The crossed-out woman. What was he hiding? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Dallas," Mr. Caldwell's voice came from the other side of the door. It was calm, measured, but there was an edge to it that made her instinctively tighten her grip on the photograph. She opened the door slowly. "Come in," he said, gesturing to the small study at the end of the hall. Unlike the rest of the house, this room felt intentionally private, almost secretive. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, interspersed with framed photos and awards. A single desk stood near the window, clean and orderly, except for a small stack of manila folders. Dallas stepped inside cautiously. He closed the door behind her. "Sit," he said, pointing to a chair opposite his desk. She obeyed, her pulse racing. She could feel the weight of the moment, as though crossing this threshold meant stepping into someone else's hidden world. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded together. His gaze was steady, but there was a tension in his jaw that betrayed a hint of frustration. Frustration at having to reveal truths he may have wanted to keep buried. "You found the photo," he said. His tone wasn't accusatory, just factual. Dallas nodded. "I did. And the ID card. And everything else. I need to understand what's going on." He exhaled, long and deliberate, then leaned forward. "You're right to ask questions. I wasn't planning on telling anyone yet, but it's time you know some of the story. Not all of it, but enough for now." Dallas braced herself. "This is about Harold Trent," he began. And about choices that people make when they think no one is watching. She listened, leaning forward slightly, trying to catch every word. Harold was more than a volunteer, he said quietly. He became a mentor, a guide, someone who shaped me into who I am. But he also had a past, one that he didn't share with me. Dallas frowned. What kind of past? He hesitated, running a hand down his face. A dangerous one. Harold was involved in things he thought he could control, things he thought he could escape. But life has a way of catching up. One day he disappeared. No explanation, no note. Nothing. Just gone. Dallas's chest tightened. And the woman in the photo? The one crossed out. Mr. Caldwell's expression darkened. Her name was Evelyn. She worked at the shelter. She discovered something about Harold, something dangerous, something that could have put me in jeopardy if I hadn't handled it carefully. Dallas's stomach dropped. Handled it? What do you mean? He leaned back, gaze distant. I won't lie. I had to make decisions, difficult ones, to protect myself and those I cared about. I didn't tell you because you're young and some truths are heavy. They're dangerous. Dallas clenched her fists in her lap. You're saying you were protecting us from him? Not from Harold, he corrected. From what Harold left behind. The words hung between them like a storm cloud. Dallas swallowed. Her mind raced. If Harold was gone, why did his ID card appear in the greenhouse? And why did the photograph suggest that someone, Evelyn, had known more than they realized? Dallas, Mr. Caldwell's voice broke her thoughts. I want to help you. I want to give you and Jenna a safe life. But you need to trust me. Fully. No reservations. She looked at him, trying to read the sincerity in his eyes. The warmth. The care. The faint trace of pain behind the polished exterior. I don't know if I can, she admitted. He nodded slowly. I understand. And I won't rush you. But you have to know one thing, Harold's past isn't done with us. Not yet. And one day, it might force my hand in ways neither of us are ready for. Dallas felt a chill creep along her spine. She realized that the danger she had been running from wasn't confined to Daryl anymore. It was bigger, broader, more complicated. And the woman? She asked, pressing. Evelyn. He shook his head. She disappeared. Like Harold, she vanished. But her warnings, her words, they stayed with me. She knew something that could have destroyed everything I built. I've spent years trying to cover it, protect myself, and protect others. And now, you and Jenna are part of that protection. Dallas leaned back, processing. Her chest felt tight, heavy with fear and frustration. The life she had barely survived in Detroit, the struggles, the nights without heat, the threats, the fear, were nothing compared to the layers of secrets she was now uncovering. She wanted answers, but she also realized that asking too many could be dangerous. The silence stretched. Finally, he leaned forward again, eyes locking on hers. I need to know. Can I trust you? Can I trust you to follow the rules here, to stay safe, and to listen when I tell you to? Dallas hesitated. Trust had been a foreign concept for years. People had lied, abandoned, or hurt her. But she looked at the man in front of her, the one who had saved them from Daryl, who had given them warmth, food, and a safe place for the first time in months. She nodded slowly. Yes. His shoulders eased slightly. Good. That's all I needed to hear. For now. Before she could ask another question, he stood and walked to the door. He glanced back, voice calm but firm. Stay here. Don't try to go looking for anything else. You'll only make things worse. And Dallas, there are people who watch. People who never forget. Be careful. Dallas's stomach churned. Her pulse raced. She wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but she knew better. There was a danger in pushing him too far too fast. As he left, closing the door behind him, Dallas let out a shaky breath. The room suddenly felt colder, emptier. She sank into the chair, holding the photograph tightly against her chest. She realized something terrifying. Even though they were safe, even though they had food, warmth, and shelter, the past had followed them. And now it was whispering in shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. From the hallway outside came Jenna's laughter. It should have been comforting. But all Dallas could think was, Harold Trent's secrets weren't finished, and whatever was coming next might change everything. The evening breeze drifted across the lake behind Reed's estate, sending ripples of silver across the dark water. The house glowed softly inside, warm light spilling onto the grass. From afar, it looked peaceful, almost too peaceful for the swirl of unease tightening in Mia's chest. She stood alone on the back deck, arms folded, staring at the reflections dancing across the lake. Inside she could still hear faint laughter, Daniel, Brooke, and Lila sharing stories after dinner. It should have been comforting. It should have made her feel safe. But tonight something felt off. Something she couldn't shake. Ever since Brooke and Lila had moved in, the rhythm of the house had changed. Not in a bad way, just different. More alive. More emotional. More unpredictable. Brooke was sweet, quiet, and guarded, yet she carried a weight in her eyes, a weight Mia couldn't decode. Lila was sunshine wrapped in soft curls, the kind of child who could melt anyone's heart. And Daniel, well, Daniel was trying to be careful, trying not to overstep, trying to be someone they could trust. And for the first time in a long time, Mia saw her brother genuinely driven by something deeper than business. But that didn't erase the gnawing feeling in her stomach. Something about their story, about their past, wasn't adding up. Mia had worked with enough vulnerable families to know when pieces didn't fit. And tonight it felt like the pieces were whispering louder than ever. She heard the door slide open behind her. Mia? Daniel's voice drifted out, low and tired. You all right? She didn't turn at first. Just thinking. He stepped beside her, folding his arms like she was. For a few seconds they just stared at the glittering water in silence. Something wrong? He finally asked. She hesitated. Do you ever feel like we're missing something? That there's more to their situation than they're telling us? Daniel exhaled, rubbing his jaw. Of course there is. Trauma isn't simple. They're kids, Mia. They're trying. I know, she said quietly. But I'm not talking about normal trauma-related avoidance. I'm talking about gaps, inconsistencies. Daniel finally glanced at her, brow raised. Such as? The school records, she said. The dates didn't line up. And when I asked Brooke today if she'd ever been enrolled in another school before Detroit, she froze. Totally froze. Like I asked her something dangerous. Daniel stiffened. Dangerous. Mia nodded slowly. And Lila, did you hear what she said at dinner? He replayed the evening in his mind, his expression changing as he remembered. Lila had been describing her second-grade teacher. Something sweet, innocent, harmless. But she'd accidentally referred to the old house in Indiana. She'd corrected herself so quickly that most people wouldn't have noticed. But Mia had. And Daniel definitely had once she mentioned it. Daniel sighed. Kids move. Sure, Mia said, but that's not what worries me. She turned toward him fully. Daniel, what if someone's looking for them? His jaw tightened. He didn't respond. And that silence? It told Mia everything she needed to know. You've thought about it too, she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly. Yeah, I have. The weight settled heavily between them. Daniel braced his hands on the deck railing. I've been trying to give them space. Time to feel safe. Pushing too hard could make everything worse. I'm not saying interrogate them, Mia said gently. But we can't protect them from something we don't understand. Before either could continue, the sliding door creaked again. Lila stepped into the doorway, clutching a stuffed gray rabbit to her chest. Her curls were messy and her eyes were wide, not sleepy but scared. Mr. Daniel, she whispered. Brooke's crying. The fear in her little voice sliced through both adults instantly. Daniel crouched down. Hey, what happened? Is she hurt? Lila shook her head, curls bouncing. No. She just woke up and got scared again. But this time she said something weird. Mia crouched beside her. Weird how? Lila hesitated, hugging the rabbit tighter. Her lower lip quivered. She said he found us. Daniel and Mia exchanged a sharp, silent glance. Who? Daniel asked carefully. Lila looked down at her feet, then whispered a name so softly Daniel almost didn't hear it. her father. A chill slid down Daniel's spine. He scooped Lila into his arms without another word, and the three of them rushed inside. Mia jogged ahead toward the guest hallway while Daniel carried Lila close, whispering calming words she barely seemed to hear. The night felt suddenly heavier. When they reached the guest room, Brooke was sitting upright on the bed, her hands clutching her shirt tightly. Her eyes were red, her breath shaking, her entire body trembling in panic. She looked up the moment they entered, and flinched. Daniel softened instantly. "Brooke, it's all right. It's okay. We're here." She pressed both hands to her mouth like she was trying not to sob. I thought I heard him. Outside the window. I heard footsteps and his voice." Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. "Brooke, I promise you're safe here. No one is getting near you or Lila." But Brooke's panic didn't ease. In fact, her breathing grew tighter, shallower. Mia stepped forward slowly. "Honey, can you tell me what you heard?" Brooke squeezed her eyes shut. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "I heard him calling my name." Daniel looked sharply at Mia. He knew this house. He knew every inch of this property. They had state-of-the-art surveillance, security professionals, alarms, and a gate that required multiple authentication layers to open. No one, not even a ghost, could get onto the grounds without triggering something. And nothing had gone off. Which left two possibilities. Brooke was having a trauma-induced flashback. Or something else was happening. Mia sat down gently on the edge of the bed. "Sweetheart, you're not in trouble, okay? You're not crazy. Panic does things to our senses. But you're safe now." Brooke shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand." Daniel knelt in front of her. "Then help us understand." Her hands tightened again. Harder. Like she was physically fighting the urge to speak. Finally, she whispered one sentence that made Daniel's entire body go cold. "Someone gave him our new location." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Mia froze. Daniel froze. Even Lila, half asleep in Daniel's arms, blinked up confusedly. Mia swallowed. "Brooke, who could have known? You told me you haven't contacted anyone." Brooke nodded. "I didn't. But someone else did. Someone who knew him. Someone who hates us." Daniel felt something dark coil in his stomach. "Who?" Brooke's voice cracked as she whispered, "My mother." A sharp, electric tension crackled through the air. Mia sank onto the bed. Daniel stared at Brooke, unable to mask the shock spreading across his face. "Your mother?" he repeated slowly. I thought she left years ago." "She did," Brooke said bitterly. "And she shows up only when she wants money, or when she wants to watch him break us again." Her breath shattered. "She blamed me for everything. For Lila. For the fights. For him going to jail. And last time she called, she said she wasn't done with us." The room went still. Silent. Heavy. Mia pressed a hand to her mouth. Daniel tightened his grip on Lila as his mind raced through the implications. Anger, confusion, fear, resolve. 100 emotions colliding at once. But one thought cut through the chaos. If what Brooke said was true, they weren't safe. Not even here. Before he could respond, Brooke suddenly looked past Daniel toward the window, her eyes widening, breath halting. "Daniel?" she whispered, voice cracking. He spun around instantly, every instinct blazing. Outside the window, the motion sensor floodlight switched on. No wind. No movement in the yard. Just light. Too perfectly timed to be a coincidence. The cliffhanger hummed in the thick silence as Daniel stepped closer to the glass, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. Something was out there. Or someone. And the night had only just begun. The floodlight glared across the backyard, turning the lawn into a harsh white stage. Daniel stood frozen, his silhouette outlined against the window as the others watched him with wide, fearful eyes. The world outside looked empty. Too empty. Not even the usual rustling of small night animals disturbed the silence. "Daniel," Mia whispered behind him, "do you see anything?" He didn't answer. His eyes scanned every inch of the illuminated yard. The trees, the lake's edge, the tool shed, the shadowed corners near the stone path. Years of business negotiations, threats, and private security drills had sharpened his instincts. And right now, those instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Stay with them, he said quietly, stepping back from the window. I'm going outside. Mia grabbed his arm instantly. Have you lost your mind? Daniel's jaw tightened. If someone is out there, I need to know who. You're not confronting anyone in the dark alone. Mia. No, her voice dropped lower. If this is what Brooke thinks it is, then we have no idea what he's capable of. You going out there doesn't protect anyone. Daniel hesitated. Lila's small hand clutched at his sleeve, her voice trembling. Please don't go. He's mean. Really mean. That tugged him harder than any warning from Mia. He knelt, brushing a curl from Lila's forehead. I promise I won't let anyone hurt you. Ever. Brooke, still trembling, stared at the window like it held a ghost. He used to do this, she whispered. He liked watching us before he came inside. He said it made him feel powerful. Mia swallowed hard. Daniel, we call security. Now. Daniel straightened, nodding reluctantly. All right. He pulled out his phone and dialed the estate's overnight security team. The line connected immediately. This is Reed. Floodlight activation on the east yard. Any motion detected on your monitors? There was a brief shuffle before the guard spoke. No, sir. No movement on any camera. Daniel froze. Run diagnostics, he demanded. Now. Yes, sir. He hung up, tension coiling in his spine. Brooke watched him, her pulse visibly racing under her skin. What does that mean? She whispered. Daniel met her eyes. It means either the cameras malfunctioned, or someone disabled them, Mia finished, her voice barely above a breath. Brooke's face went white. Lila whimpered again. The phone rang back and Daniel answered immediately. Sir, the guard said, voice now tight, I'm not picking up any errors. The cameras are functioning perfectly. Daniel's grip tightened. Then why didn't they detect motion? A beat of silence. I don't know, sir. Daniel exhaled sharply. Do a perimeter sweep. Send 2 guards to the east side, 1 to the front gate and 1 to the lake path. Call me the minute you see anything, it doesn't matter how small. Yes, sir. Already on it. The moment Daniel lowered his phone, Mia said the 6 words that chilled everyone in the room. He's done this before, hasn't he? Brooke's gaze dropped to her shaking hands. He's always been good at hiding. Pretending he's not there. Making us doubt what we heard. A cold wave washed over the room. Mia knelt in front of her. Honey, when was the last time you saw him? Brooke swallowed, her voice thin and cracking. The night we ran. She stopped, her breath catching. Lila looked up at Daniel and whispered, he had a hammer. Daniel felt ice creep into his bloodstream. Before he could speak, the security radio crackled from his phone, an unexpected override frequency. Mr. Reed, a guard reported. We're at the east yard now. No sign of anyone. Check the tree line, Daniel ordered. Pause. Footsteps. More silence. Then, sir, you need to see this. Daniel stiffened. What? We found footprints. Small ones. Heading toward the woods. Mia paled instantly. Footprints? Like a child? No, the guard corrected. Adult male, but barefoot. That single detail made Brooke let out a strangled sob, covering her mouth before the sound could escape. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles whitened. Send me a picture. When it arrived, Daniel's stomach twisted. Clear prints. Bare. Leading away from the house. And fresh. Whoever had been standing outside the window hadn't run, not at first. They'd walked. Slowly. Calmly. Like they had time. Mia whispered, Daniel, this is escalating. He knew she was right. He turned to Brooke. You told me your father was in jail. Are you absolutely sure? Brooke nodded, tears spilling. He was. He got out 2 months ago. Daniel's heart slammed hard. And you didn't tell anyone that? Her voice broke. We were scared they'd separate us or send us back. Mia rubbed her temples, pacing. All right. Okay. This is salvageable. We'll call CPS first thing tomorrow? Brooke's breath hitched violently. No. Please no. Don't let them take Lila. Don't let them separate us. Daniel stepped closer, lowering himself to her level, his tone calm but firm. Brooke, listen to me. No one is taking Lila. I'll talk to my attorney before anyone talks to an agency. Brooke sniffed, nodding, but fear still clung to her like a second skin. Lila burrowed into Daniel's shoulder. I don't want him to come back. Daniel gently stroked her back. He won't get anywhere near you. You have my word. Mia's gaze snapped back toward the window suddenly. Not because of movement, but because the floodlight flickered. Just once. Like a glitch. Except there were no glitches tonight. Daniel turned toward the window too, tension crackling in the air. Mia whispered, "It's like he's testing us." Before Daniel could respond, the security radio buzzed again. This time fast, urgent. Mr. Reed, front gate. We've got movement on camera 1. Daniel's pulse spiked. Who? The guard's voice trembled. Sir, we can't see his face. He's standing at the entrance. Not moving. He's just waiting. Brooke made a soft, broken sound. Lila gripped Daniel's collar tight. Mia whispered, "Oh God." Daniel stared at the window, teeth clenched, voice steady but laced with cold fury. Lock down the gate. Do not, under any circumstances, let him pass that line. Yes, sir. Daniel ended the call, turning toward the others. Get your things, he said. All of you. Brooke blinked. We're leaving this room, Daniel said firmly. Until security clears this, no one is sleeping alone. Mia nodded immediately. We'll take the guest suite by the west wing. Only one door, no outside access. It's safer. Daniel agreed. Move quickly. They gathered Brooke's and Lila's belongings with shaky hands, stuffing clothes, sketches, and Lila's rabbit into bags. The air was thick with fear, urgency, and the silent question no one wanted to voice. As they walked down the hallway, Daniel kept Lila in his arms while Brooke trailed close, constantly looking over her shoulder. Mia walked behind them, checking every corner. Halfway down the hallway, the lights overhead flickered. Everyone froze. Just for a heartbeat. But that was enough. Brooke whispered, "He's closer." Daniel shook his head. No. That's just the system recalibrating after the floodlight surge. But even as he said it, he wasn't convinced. Once inside the West Wing suite, Daniel locked the door, checked the windows, checked the vents, checked everything twice. Mia pulled extra blankets from the closet. Brooke sat trembling on the edge of the bed, and Lila curled beside her. After a long silence, Brooke finally spoke in a whisper. He won't stop. You don't understand. He doesn't quit until he gets what he wants. Daniel crouched in front of her, his eyes unwavering. Then he chose the wrong house. Brooke stared at him, her fear slowly mixing with something else, trust. And just as that fragile trust settled into the room, Daniel's phone vibrated with a text from security. He opened it. A single sentence lit up the screen. Sir, he's no longer at the gate. Daniel's heart dropped. There was no follow-up. No explanation. No location update. Just gone. Vanished. And that was far, far worse. The suite felt smaller than it should have, too many emotions pressed into too little space. Brooke and Lila were curled together on the large bed. Mia sat in the chair near the door like a silent sentinel, and Daniel stood by the window with the blinds down, staring at nothing. His phone remained in his hand, the last message repeating like a warning echoing inside his mind. He's no longer at the gate. Disappeared. Slipped away like a shadow. And that terrified Daniel more than seeing the man outright. Mia finally spoke, her voice low but tight. Do you want me to call the police? Daniel didn't answer right away. His thoughts spun fast, too fast. Calling the police would open up everything. Questions. Background checks. Investigations. If authorities discovered the irregularities in Brooke and Lila's living situation, they could remove the girls from his care until the system sorted things out. And Brooke wouldn't survive that. Lila wouldn't survive that. No, he said at last. Not yet. Mia pressed her lips together but didn't argue. She understood what he wasn't saying. Brooke's head lifted, eyes red and puffy. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted to bring this danger to your house. Daniel shook his head. This isn't your fault. But it is, she insisted, voice trembling. He always finds us, no matter where we go. Lila clung to her sister's sleeve. He said he would. Mia knelt beside them. Honey, listen to me. That man hurt you. That doesn't mean he's unstoppable. People like him rely on fear, not power. Brooke sniffed, swallowing hard. He scares people on purpose. Daniel turned from the window. And I won't let him scare you again. His phone buzzed, this time a call. He answered immediately. Reed. Sir, the guard's voice said, breathless. We lost visual on the intruder, but we located something near the front path. Daniel stiffened. What? A note. Mia's eyes snapped to Daniel. Bring it to my office, Daniel instructed. Don't show anyone else. Wear gloves. And do not, under any circumstances, approach the woods. Yes, sir. He ended the call. Brooke hugged her knees closer. A note? For who? Daniel didn't want to answer. He didn't need to. She already knew. For us, she whispered. Daniel nodded. For you. The air tightened, wrapped with unease. When the guard brings it, Mia said, we'll handle it carefully. It might tell us what he's planning. Brooke's voice trembled. He's planning to take us back. No, Daniel said firmly. That's not happening. His tone was so certain, so absolute, that even Brooke lifted her gaze. Silence stretched through the room until Lila spoke softly. Mr. Daniel, are we safe here? Daniel crouched in front of her, brushing her hair back gently. You're safe with me. I promise. She nodded, though fear still shimmered in her eyes. A knock at the suite door made everyone jump. Daniel and Mia moved in sync, Mia shielding the girls while Daniel approached the door cautiously. Who is it? Daniel called. It's Cole, sir. One of the guards. I have the letter. Daniel opened the door a few inches. Cole, a tall guard with a shaved head and level eyes, held an evidence bag. Inside lay a single folded paper. No envelope. No name. Just a paper with fingerprint smudges smeared across the edges. Where did you find it? Daniel asked. Right at the entrance on the ground. Like he wanted us to see it. Daniel took the bag. Good work. Keep the team tight. No one wanders alone. Yes, sir. He shut the door softly and held up the bag. Brooke's breath hitched. I can't read that. You don't have to, Mia said gently. Daniel unfolded the letter slowly, carefully through the plastic. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, like someone had scraped the words instead of writing them. 4 lines. Short. He read them once. Then again. His expression darkened. What does it say? Brooke whispered. Daniel didn't want to tell them. But secrets were dangerous right now. And Brooke was already drowning in fear. He read aloud. You took what's mine. I always take back what was stolen. You can't hide her. Blood returns to blood. Lila whimpered and buried her face in Brooke's side. Brooke closed her eyes in agony. Mia whispered, he's obsessed. Daniel folded the bag again. He's unstable. Dangerous. But he's not getting close to either of you. Brooke's voice cracked. He thinks he owns us. Daniel's tone sharpened. He owns nothing. But Brooke shook her head, not in disagreement but in horror. That's not what scares me most. What does? Mia asked gently. Brooke's eyes filled with a new kind of panic, deeper, heavier. He doesn't want me, she whispered. He wants Lila. Daniel's blood went cold. Lila looked up, big brown eyes full of confusion. Me? Brooke nodded slowly. Because she's not just my sister. She's his daughter. That sentence shattered the room. Mia froze. Daniel felt the floor tilt under his feet. Lila blinked up at them, oblivious to the storm that had just broken. Brooke covered her mouth, crying silently. I tried to protect her. I tried to keep him away. But when he found out she was his, something in him snapped. He became obsessed. Mia whispered, that explains everything. Why he's relentless. Why he hunts you. Daniel's jaw clenched. He thinks she belongs to him. He said he'd come for her one day, Brooke choked out, and that it didn't matter where we went. Lila slowly leaned into Daniel again, gripping his shirt with pale fingers. Am I in trouble? She whispered. Daniel's voice broke with fierce certainty. No, you're safe. I swear to you you're safe. Brooke cried harder, shoulders shaking. I shouldn't have brought this into your life. You gave me the chance to help when no one else did, Daniel said quietly. That's not a burden. Another knock startled the room. Daniel and Mia whipped their heads toward the door. That can't be Cole again, Mia whispered. Daniel moved quietly toward the door, motioning for Mia to stay with the kids. Who is it? He called. No answer. Silence. Daniel's hand hovered over the doorknob. Mia mouthed, don't open it. Daniel didn't. He checked the hallway camera feed on his phone with trembling fingers. The hallway appeared empty. But a shadow moved, flickered, too quickly at the far edge of the frame. Mia's breath caught. Brooke screamed. And the suite's lights went out. Not flickered. Not dimmed. Went black. Total darkness swallowed the room. Lila cried out. Brooke clutched her tight. Mia fumbled for her phone. Daniel's voice cut through the panic, steady but hard as steel. Everyone stay away from the door. A metallic sound echoed in the hallway, slow, scraping, deliberate. Someone was outside. Someone waiting. The long-awaited charity gala finally arrives, a night meant to celebrate hope, elegance, and generosity. For Arya and her father, it becomes something far more personal. For the first time in years, Arya isn't worried about being seen in public. But as she stands before the mirror in the gown Daniel gifted her, simple, elegant, and perfectly her hands tremble. She's not nervous about the dress. She's nervous about deserving to be there. Her father, dressed in a borrowed suit, notices immediately. You belong in every room you walk into, he tells her. Not because of the dress, but because of the heart you've always had. His words settle her spirit. When they enter the grand hall, all eyes turn. People whisper, not with judgment but admiration. Daniel spots them instantly and walks over with a smile so warm it calms the entire room. He offers his hand to Arya. You look incredible. Ready? She nods, though her heart races. During the first slow dance, Daniel invites her onto the floor. At first, she hesitates, thinking the wealthy donors will talk. But Daniel silences her insecurity with a simple whisper. Let them look. They'll see strength, not shame. As they dance, Arya feels something unfamiliar. She feels worthy. Her father watches from the table, eyes shining with pride and disbelief. Halfway through the evening, Daniel steps onto the stage. He shocks everyone when he calls Arya up to join him. She freezes, but the room fills with encouraging applause. Tonight, Daniel says to the crowd, we honor resilience. We honor those who rise despite the odds. And no one embodies that more than Arya. Gasps ripple through the hall. Arya's father covers his mouth, overwhelmed. Daniel presents her with a small scholarship certificate, something he arranged quietly after hearing her dream of studying fashion. Arya's voice trembles as she speaks. For the first time, I feel seen. Thank you. It is the rawest, most powerful moment of the night. Some people whisper in admiration, others in jealousy, but most are moved. The gala becomes not just a fundraiser, but a lesson in humanity. As the event ends, Daniel walks Arya and her father out. He looks at her, not the dress, not her past, not the poverty. This is only the beginning for you, he says softly. And for the first time in her life, Arya believes it. The morning after the gala should have been filled with excitement, joy, or at least peace. Instead, it becomes the start of a storm Arya never saw coming. Someone at the gala snapped a picture. Daniel and Arya dancing, smiling, glowing under the soft lights. The photo spreads online overnight. But instead of celebrating the beautiful moment, rumors twisted into something ugly. Billionaire caught with mystery girl from nowhere. Who is she? Gold digger? She must be after his money. Arya isn't even aware of the online noise, but she feels its shadows in the real world. She goes to buy groceries that morning, still floating from the magical night. But people stare. Two women pretend to pick oranges while talking loudly enough for her to hear. Imagine being that desperate. Some girls will do anything for attention. Arya freezes. Her chest tightens. She doesn't understand what changed. When she returns home with trembling hands, her father instantly knows something is wrong. She tries to hide it. He gently insists. When she breaks down, he hugs her fiercely. People talk because they are hurting or jealous. But their noise doesn't define your truth. His words help, but only a little. At his office, Daniel's assistant shows him the trending posts. His face darkens, not with anger toward Arya, but toward the cruelty of the world. He immediately calls her, but she doesn't pick up. Not because she's ignoring him, but because she's scared she'll cry if she hears his voice. So he drives across town without hesitation. Arya answers the door reluctantly, eyes red from tears. Daniel's expression softens the moment he sees her. "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to be a problem," she whispers. His voice sharpens, not in anger but in certainty. "You are not a problem, Arya. You're someone I care about. Deeply." Those words strike straight into her chest. They sit at the small table in her living room. He explains what happened online. She listens silently until finally whispering, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong in your world." Daniel leans forward. "You belong anywhere you want to be. And you belong in any world that has me in it." Her breath catches. It's the closest he has ever come to confessing his feelings. Before leaving, Daniel places a gentle hand over hers. "Don't let strangers write your story. We'll get through this, together." For the first time that day, Arya feels a fragile sense of hope return. But she doesn't know yet that the storm has only just begun. The evening air was thick with tension as Arya left the studio where she had stayed late, working on designs for her scholarship portfolio. The night was unusually still, the city's streetlights casting long, distorted shadows along the empty streets. Her heart beat faster with each step toward the parking garage, and a creeping unease followed her like a second shadow. As she approached her car, Arya noticed movement in the corner of her eye, a figure leaning against the far wall of the garage. Her pulse quickened. She scanned the surroundings. No other cars, no witnesses, just the dim hum of fluorescent lights. Probably just someone waiting for their car, she told herself. But her voice sounded hollow even in her own ears. She quickened her pace, keys clutched tightly in her hand. The figure shifted, stepping closer, but still far enough to remain in the shadows. A cold shiver ran down Arya's spine. The man, she could feel it. He wasn't a stranger. Something in the way he moved, the deliberate, slow steps, felt intimately dangerous. Her thoughts raced back to the letter, the whispers, and the relentless obsession someone had for Lila. And now here he was. She reached her car and fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking violently. The figure stopped a few feet away. She could finally make out the shape of his face under the dim light, a shadowed jawline, cold eyes. Her breath caught. He didn't speak. He just watched. Arya's instincts screamed. She dropped the keys into the car, jumped in, and locked the doors. Her chest heaving, she started the engine and kept her eyes fixed on the figure. As she reversed slowly, the man didn't move. He remained standing there, as if the shadows themselves were holding him up. The garage exit felt miles away. Every step of the engine echoed like thunder in the cavernous space. She could hear nothing but her own heartbeat and the faint scraping sound of concrete under his boots. Then just as she reached the ramp, he vanished. Arya froze. Vanished. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. By the time she reached her apartment, Arya's hands were trembling so much she could barely hold the phone. She dialed Daniel immediately. "Daniel?" she gasped the moment he answered. "Arya? What's wrong?" His voice was calm but edged with concern. "There was someone in the parking garage, watching me." Her words tumbled out, hurried and frantic. Daniel's tone sharpened. "Stay there. Lock every door. I'm coming." He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even wait for her to describe the man's features. He just came. Within 20 minutes, Daniel was at her door, security in tow. He inspected the garage, noting the empty corners, the still-lit fluorescent tubes, and the eerily clean floors. There was no trace, no footprints, no clues, nothing. Aria's anxiety surged. He was there, Daniel. I know it. He was. Daniel took a deep breath, placing a hand on her shoulder. I believe you. That's all that matters right now. We'll handle this. But even as he said it, his jaw tightened, and his eyes scanned every dark corner as if expecting the man to materialize again. Daniel led Aria back to her apartment, ensuring she locked the doors behind them. He turned to her, his face serious. This isn't random. He's tracking us. He knows where you are, and he's patient. More patient than anyone I've ever dealt with. This is personal. Aria's stomach dropped. But why? Why me? Daniel's gaze softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the urgency in his voice. It's not you alone. It's the connection. He's obsessed, and obsessions aren't logical. They don't make sense. They only follow what the heart, or the dark side of it, wants. She swallowed, feeling a cold knot in her stomach. Daniel began outlining a plan. Surveillance cameras installed at every entrance and window. Security patrols rotating every 30 minutes. Daniel himself remaining nearby, checking in regularly. I'll make sure no one touches you or Lila. Not him, not anyone. Aria wanted to believe him. She really did. But the fear that had rooted itself in her chest refused to release its grip. Even with Daniel by her side, even with the security, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was always just out of reach, watching, waiting. That night, as Aria tried to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about the man in the garage. What if he came back? What if he wasn't alone? She reached for her phone and texted Brooke and Lila to check on them, even though they were asleep under Daniel's supervision. Her heart ached with the realization that no matter how safe she tried to make everything, there were forces outside her control, forces with patience and cunning she had never encountered. And then she remembered the words from the letter. Blood returns to blood. Her pulse quickened. Was he planning something bigger than she could imagine? Sleep didn't come. Instead, shadows moved behind her eyelids. Whispers she couldn't quite hear floated through the room. Every creak, every draft, every distant footstep became a threat. She realized one terrifying truth. Even with Daniel, even with safety measures, the darkness was still out there. And it had found her. The morning sun broke over the city, spilling light into Aria's apartment, but the warmth did little to ease the chill of fear that had settled over her. She sat at the small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. Last night replayed in her mind like a film she couldn't pause or stop. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly. She hesitated before answering. Aria? It was Daniel, his voice calm but carrying an urgency that made her stomach clench. What's wrong? She asked immediately. You need to listen carefully, he said, lowering his voice. I've discovered something about the man in the parking garage. You were right to be afraid. He's not just an intruder. He's someone from your past. Her heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? There's a file I pulled from an old case. Your mother, she wasn't acting alone. He, her accomplice, has been tracking you since you left Michigan. Aria's hands trembled. She dropped her coffee mug, the ceramic clattering against the counter, startling her. Daniel continued. Her accomplice. His name is Richard Calloway. He's been involved in multiple cases of kidnapping and harassment, but he's careful. He leaves no evidence. But the pattern, everything points to him targeting you and your sister. Aria's mind went blank. Why me? Because Lila isn't just your sister, Daniel said gravely. She's connected to him in ways we didn't fully understand. He believes she has something he wants, something tied to your family history. The room spun. Questions, fears, and memories crashed over her all at once. Before she could process Daniel's words, a soft knock came at the door. Aria? Brooke's voice called from the hallway. Can I come in? Aria's heart pounded. She hadn't expected anyone else to arrive, especially not now when she was barely holding herself together. Come in, she said, voice tight. Brooke entered cautiously, eyes scanning the apartment. She carried a small envelope in her hand. "I found this in Lila's backpack," Brooke whispered. "It wasn't there this morning." Aria's pulse quickened as she took the envelope. No handwriting she recognized. No stamp. Just a single word written in jagged letters on the front. "Open." With shaking hands, Aria opened the envelope. Inside was a note, typewritten, crisp, and chillingly calm. "Stop hiding. Stop trusting anyone outside this circle. We know where she sleeps. We know where she learns. Blood always calls to blood. Tonight we come for her." Aria's breath caught in her throat. Brooke gasped. "It's him." Daniel had already arrived, slipping in silently behind them. He read the note, his expression darkening. He knows everything. He's watching, waiting. And this time he's planning more than intimidation. The words were like ice in Aria's veins. Daniel immediately called his security team. "Lock all exits. Every camera. Full surveillance. Do not let anyone leave or enter without my confirmation." He turned to the girls. "No one leaves this apartment alone. Not for anything. No phone calls. No errands. Nothing." Aria felt fear and relief mingle. Relief that Daniel was taking control, fear that even he might not be able to stop what was coming. "We're not safe anywhere," Brooke said quietly, hugging Lila. "Not yet," Daniel admitted. "But we will be. I promise." Later that evening, Daniel pulled Aria aside. His face was serious, almost unreadable. "There's something else you need to know. Lila isn't just a target because of your family. She's connected to a trust fund your father set up long ago, something her mother never disclosed to you. Calloway believes she has a claim and he won't stop until he gets it." Aria's stomach dropped. Memories of her mother's stories, half-forgotten legal papers, and strange phone calls came rushing back. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Aria whispered. "Because no one knew Calloway would be this dangerous," Daniel said. "And because your mother kept secrets, dangerous secrets that put everyone at risk." The weight of the past and present collided. Aria realized she had been running all her life, not just from poverty, not just from fear, but from people who wanted to control her destiny. Suddenly, a thought struck Daniel, making his face pale. "Aria. Brooke, this isn't just about Calloway. Someone inside your circle may be feeding him information. Someone you trust." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Aria's eyes widened. Brooke gasped. Lila clung tighter to Brooke. Daniel continued, voice low and sharp. "The note wasn't left by chance. He knows you're here because someone told him. We have a mole." Silence. Aria's mind raced. Who could it be? How long had someone been watching, waiting, and reporting on them? She felt the first real icy sting of betrayal. Not just fear, but the realization that she couldn't trust anyone fully. The twist hit harder than anything Calloway could do physically. The threat wasn't just outside. It was inside too. And with that knowledge, she understood the true danger wasn't just about escaping Calloway. It was about finding out who had betrayed them first. The apartment lights flickered once, briefly plunging the room into darkness. When they came back on, a shadow moved across the far corner, a silhouette neither Aria nor Daniel recognized. Before anyone could react, the sound of a single, deliberate click echoed from the hallway. And then a voice whispered, chilling and familiar, "You can't hide anymore." The apartment was silent after the whispered threat, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Aria, Brooke, and Lila huddled together on the sofa, eyes wide, ears straining for any sound from the hallway. Daniel stood near the door, his stance tense, hands clenched into fists. The shadow of danger loomed, but this time it wasn't outside, it was inside. Daniel quickly scanned the room, then the hallway monitor. Nothing. No movement. Yet the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps had come from somewhere nearby. He whispered to Aria, "Stay here. Do not move. Do exactly as I say." Aria's throat tightened. The fear wasn't just about Calloway anymore, it was the betrayal. Someone they trusted had been feeding him information. "Who could it be?" she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He already had suspicions. Daniel retraced the last week's events. Every delivery, every visitor, every phone call. Something didn't fit. Mia had noticed small inconsistencies as well. Messages deleted from security logs, brief interruptions in surveillance feeds, packages arriving a few hours late. Someone is covering tracks, Daniel muttered. And they know exactly what they're doing. He decided to test the mole. I need to stage a move tonight, he said to Mia. Pretend Lila and Brooke are leaving for an emergency. Let's see who reacts. Mia's eyes widened. You mean bait him? Daniel nodded. Exactly. Whoever moves to intercept or call Calloway will reveal themselves. Later that evening, Daniel instructed Arya and Brooke to pack a small bag. Lila clutched her stuffed rabbit tightly, sensing the tension but too young to understand. Just a short trip, Daniel reassured them. We'll be back in a few hours. Everything is fine. Mia positioned herself by the security monitors. Daniel opened a side door to the alley behind the building, preparing to stage their departure. Arya's stomach churned. Something about this plan felt dangerous. But the fear of Calloway and now of the mole left them with no choice. As they pretended to leave, Daniel observed the building's surveillance feed. At first, nothing happened. Then, the faint outline of a figure appeared at the window of a neighboring apartment, someone peering down at them. Daniel's eyes narrowed. There. That's our mole. Mia zoomed in. The figure's posture, the way they tilted their head to watch the car, made Daniel's blood run cold. Who is that? Arya whispered. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He had to be certain. Within minutes, Daniel and Mia managed to bring the figure down to the main floor under the pretense of a delivery issue. The mole was caught off guard. It was someone they had trusted completely, a former assistant of Arya's mother, Vanessa Clark. Vanessa? Arya's voice trembled. You knew. Vanessa's expression was cold, almost detached. I didn't know it would go this far, she said. But I had to make sure she ended up where she belonged. Daniel stepped forward, fists tightening. Where she belonged. You endangered 3 lives for, what? Loyalty to a criminal? Vanessa's eyes flickered with shame, but she didn't apologize. I did what I thought was right. I couldn't let Calloway lose her either. Arya's mind raced. You mean, you were giving him information? About us? About Lila? Vanessa nodded slowly. I didn't have a choice. He's dangerous. I was trying to minimize the harm, but it spiraled out of control. Brooke's face twisted in anger. You put us in danger. You let him stalk us. Vanessa flinched. I know, and I regret it every day. I thought keeping him slightly informed would prevent worse. I was wrong. I failed you all. Daniel's jaw was tight, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a steely edge. You're done here. No more secrets. And if I ever find out you lied again, you won't have a chance to regret it. You'll just suffer the consequences. Even though the immediate threat of the mole was neutralized, the damage was done. Arya felt a part of her world shatter. How can we ever trust anyone again? She whispered to Brooke. Brooke hugged Lila, tears flowing freely. I don't know. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on Arya's shoulder. Trust has to be rebuilt. And it starts with truth. Vanessa can't fix what she's done, but we can control what happens next. As Vanessa was escorted out, a sudden alert pinged on Daniel's phone. The security team was reporting unusual activity near the building's service entrance. Footsteps moving at a fast pace. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew immediately, Calloway was closer than ever. He turned to Arya and Brooke, urgency flashing across his face. He knows we've found the mole. And now he's coming. A cold shiver ran through all of them. Outside, the night seemed darker, heavier, as if it too sensed the storm approaching. The night pressed heavily against the windows of Daniel's penthouse, a silent warning that the danger outside was no longer creeping, it was sprinting toward them. Arya sat on the edge of the sofa, gripping Lila close, while Brooke paced the room, her breaths short and uneven. The air felt charged, tight with panic, confusion, and something darker, truths waiting to surface. Daniel stood near the window, surveying the city below. His phone buzzed every few seconds with updates from security. Each alert made Arya flinch. Calloway is circling the building, Daniel finally said. He knows we found Vanessa. He's escalating. A tremor ran down Aria's spine. What does he want? Why keep coming after us? Daniel hesitated. Not much scared him, but this did. The room fell silent as Daniel turned away from the window and looked directly at Aria. Before we do anything else, I need you to hear something. It's about your mother. Aria stiffened. My mother? What does she have to do with any of this? Daniel sat across from her, his expression somber. After Vanessa was detained, she admitted something. Your mother wasn't just Calloway's partner. Aria frowned. What do you mean? Daniel took a slow breath. She wasn't just working with him. She was in love with him. And more than that, she had a child with him. Aria's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. The world tilted. Words blurred. Brooke stopped pacing. Daniel, what are you saying? He lowered his voice, each word heavy, deliberate. Lila isn't just a target to Calloway. She is his daughter. The room froze. Aria stared at Daniel, her breath caught in her throat. No, that's impossible. She's my sister. My father. Daniel shook his head gently, eyes filled with sympathy. Your father never knew. Your mother hid it from him. From you. She kept Lila's true paternity a secret. And Calloway only recently discovered the truth himself. Aria's world shattered in an instant. Brooke covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears gathering. Lila looked between them, confused but sensing the fear. I'm his daughter? Lila whispered. Aria pulled her close, voice breaking. You're mine. Nothing changes that. But deep inside, shock twisted into something else. Rage, grief, disbelief. Everything they knew about their family had been a lie. Daniel continued gently, though every word sliced deeper. Calloway isn't just obsessed. He believes he has a right to her. He wants to take her, raise her, control her. All because he thinks she's his legacy. Aria clenched her jaw. He's sick. Daniel didn't argue. But there's more. Your mother left behind legal documents, custody agreements she never filed. If Calloway gets his hands on Lila, he might try to use these to claim her legally. Aria's skin crawled. He's planning to take her permanently. Daniel nodded. This isn't just intimidation anymore. It's a retrieval attempt. A retrieval. The word felt poisonous. Brooke collapsed onto a chair, covering her face. We never stood a chance, did we? She sobbed. We were fighting shadows, lies, everything our mother hid. Aria knelt beside her. We didn't choose any of this. But we're not powerless. Daniel's gaze softened at the sight of Aria comforting Brooke, but urgency pulsed beneath his calm exterior. We can still stop him. But we need to move, now. Daniel stood, shifting into strategist mode. I'm relocating all of you tonight. A secure location outside the city. He won't be able to track you. Aria shook her head. Running won't solve this. He'll keep coming. Daniel met her gaze. Not running. Positioning. If we take Lila and disappear temporarily, he'll lose the leverage he thinks he has. Then we cut him off from every possible access point. Brooke wiped her eyes. Where would we go? Somewhere only I know, Daniel said. Protected, off-grid, completely sealed. But before Aria could respond, Daniel's phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made his face go white. He snapped to attention. He's inside the building. Aria's breath caught. What? Calloway breached a service tunnel, Daniel said, already moving toward the control screen. He bypassed 2 security checkpoints. He's heading upward. Panic rippled through the room. Brooke grabbed Lila, holding her close. Daniel's voice sharpened with authority. We have minutes, maybe less. He motioned to Aria. Take Lila and Brooke to the panic room. Go now. Aria paused. What about you? Daniel looked at her, and in his eyes, fear, determination, and a protectiveness so fierce it shook her. I'll stop him. I have to. Footsteps thundered in the stairwell, fast, determined. Calloway was coming. Mia rushed in. He's on the 15th floor, 2 levels below us. Daniel cursed under his breath. That's faster than expected. Go. Now. Arya grabbed Brooke's hand and pulled her toward the hidden door behind the bookshelf. Lila sobbed softly. Arya, I'm scared. Arya forced calm into her voice. It's okay, baby. I'm here. I'm not leaving you. But inside, terror stormed. Just as Arya opened the hidden panel to the panic room, a shadow stretched across the hallway floor. A slow, heavy step. A breath. Then a voice floated toward them, dark and chilling. Arya, don't run. I just want what's mine. Arya froze. Calloway was standing at the end of the hall. His eyes locked on Lila, and he smiled. The wind cut sharply across the ridgeline as dusk pooled over the Colorado foothills like ink spreading across paper. In the failing light, the Valentine family lodge looked almost unreal, warm windows glowing amber against the darkening sky, smoke from the stone chimney drifting upward in slow curls. But inside, the warmth was strained, the tension quiet yet thick enough to feel. Billionaire Gregory Valentine stood near the tall window, arms folded, staring out at the pine forest below. His normally steady breathing was tight and uneven. The revelation from Detective Ramirez earlier, the confirmation that someone had been following the girls, watching the house, tracking their movements, still pulsed in his mind like an alarm. Behind him, Jada and Renee sat on the edge of the leather couch. Renee clutched a mug of hot chocolate with both hands even though it had gone cold long ago. Her wide eyes tracked every movement in the room, showing fear she was trying hard to hide. Jada, older and more practiced at masking her emotions, sat straighter, chin lifted, but her leg bounced with anxious energy. Greg finally turned toward them. You're safe here, he said, voice low but firm. No one is getting through this property without being stopped. Renee nodded, though she didn't seem fully convinced. Detective Ramirez told you something else, Jada said quietly. You're holding back. Greg didn't respond immediately. Not because he wanted to lie or avoid, but because the truth was a knot he didn't know how to untie without tightening everything around it. Ramirez has leads, he finally said. Real ones. And he thinks this person, whoever has been watching you, might already know you're staying with me. Renee's small gasp echoed. Jada's jaw tightened. So they know where we are. Greg stepped forward, crouching so his eyes met theirs. My security team is doubled. The gate is watched. No one is coming near you without me knowing. The girls nodded slowly, and for a moment silence settled, until the faint echo of a cell phone vibrated across the wooden floor. It was Jada's. Greg watched her expression shift as she picked up the phone, eyes narrowing slightly. Unknown number, she murmured. Don't answer, Greg said immediately. But it was already too late. The screen lit up with a text message. Jada's breath stuttered. What is it? Greg asked. She held out the phone. One sentence glowed on the screen. You think he can protect you? He failed your father too. The color drained from Jada's face. Greg snatched the phone, reading the message twice. The words hit him like ice water running down his spine. How did they get your number? He muttered. You changed it 2 weeks ago. Jada swallowed. I don't know. Only the shelter has it. Greg's mind began racing through possibilities. Someone inside the shelter? Someone with access to county records? Someone connected to him? The thought unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. He walked toward the hallway. I need to call Ramirez. Lock the doors. Stay here. But before he could step away, Renee's voice stopped him. Mr. Gregory, what did that text mean about our dad? Jada glared softly at her sister, silently pleading for the question to drop. But Greg knew it was time. He couldn't shield them from this forever. He returned to the couch, exhaling slowly. You deserve to know, he said. Both of you. Renee sat forward anxiously. Jada didn't move. When your father worked for the nonprofit I funded in Chicago, Greg began, he uncovered suspicious financial activity. Large transfers that didn't match the organization's records. When he brought it to my team, I pushed for an internal audit. Jada nodded slowly, remembering pieces of this from her father's hurried late-night conversations. But during that audit, Greg continued, your father said he was receiving threats. Messages telling him to stop digging. Renee trembled. You never told anyone that, Jada whispered. Not like that. I didn't want to frighten you. He asked me not to involve law enforcement until he had more proof. And I agreed. Greg's voice cracked slightly. It's the one decision I regret every day. Because 2 weeks later, your father's car went off the road. Renee started crying silently. You think the crash wasn't an accident? Jada said, voice barely audible. Greg didn't answer, not directly. I think someone wanted him quiet, he said finally. And I fear that same person may still be trying to erase whatever trail he left. Jada looked down, fists clenched. So they're after us because they think we know something. Or because they think you have what he hid, Greg said. A document, an account, a message. Anything. Jada blinked in confusion. But we don't have anything. Nothing like that. Greg studied her face. Something flickered there. Confusion, yes, but also something else. He would have pressed further, but suddenly, a loud banging echoed from downstairs. All three froze. Renee's mug rattled against the table as she set it down with shaking hands. Greg rose instantly, every muscle in his body alert. That's the lower deck entrance, he whispered. Jada stood, grabbing Renee's hand. Greg motioned for them to move behind him. I need you both to stay close. Don't run unless I tell you. Another bang, louder this time. Greg tapped a command on his phone. Within seconds, heavy footsteps charged up the hallway, his security team. They motioned silently, forming a protective circle around the girls as Greg approached the stairway with them. When they reached the landing, one of the guards lifted a hand to stop him. We'll check it first, sir. Greg was about to argue he wanted to be the first one down there, but he knew better. He had brought these men on for a reason. They moved down the stairs like shadows, disappearing around the corner. Seconds stretched. The house creaked. Renee clung to her sister, trembling. Then, a shout. Sir, you need to see this. Greg sprinted down the stairs. The girls stayed back, but close enough to peek from the landing. A security guard pointed to the back door. It wasn't broken. It wasn't tampered with. But taped right to the glass, perfectly centered, was a small white envelope. Jada felt Renee grip her hand harder. Greg took a breath and pulled on gloves before removing the envelope. The edges were crisp, the paper clean. Whoever placed it there had done so seconds before the guards arrived. Inside was a single piece of paper. Greg unfolded it. His eyes froze, then widened, then narrowed with something between fear and fury. Jada stepped down one stair. What does it say? Greg looked up at her, and the expression on his face made the hair on the back of her neck rise. It says, Greg whispered, voice grave and low. You're looking in the wrong direction. Asked Jada where she hid the notebook. Jada's breath caught. Renee turned to her slowly, confused. But Jada went pale. Because suddenly, she remembered something. Something she had buried so deep she thought it was gone forever. And Greg saw that shift in her eyes. Jada, he said, stepping closer. What notebook? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Because she wasn't just remembering the notebook. She was remembering exactly why she had hidden it. And exactly who she had hidden it from. Jada stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. The words asked Jada where she hid the notebook echoing through every corner of her mind. Renee stared at her, confused and scared, while Gregory Valentine's sharp, searching gaze held her in place. Jada, he repeated softly, stepping closer. What notebook? Her throat tightened. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out the crackle of the fireplace and the murmured voices of the security guards. She whispered, but the words stuck. Renee tugged on her sleeve. What notebook, Jada? What are they talking about? Greg placed a steady hand on Jada's shoulder. You're safe. Tell us. She took a shaky breath. It was months before Dad died, she finally said. He started acting different. He would come home late, keep checking the windows, whisper on the phone when he thought we were asleep. She swallowed hard. One night, I heard him fighting with someone over the phone. He said something about proof, and that if anything happened to him, it wouldn't end there. Greg's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent, letting her speak. He told me, just me, not Renee, that if the house ever felt unsafe, I should hide a small leather notebook he kept in his work bag. Her voice cracked. He said I should never tell anyone about it, not even our mom. Greg stiffened. You hid it? He asked. Jada nodded slowly. Where? He pressed gently. Jada hesitated. Her hands trembled. In Chicago. Before everything happened. After he died. I forgot about it. Or maybe I wanted to forget. It could contain the evidence he died for, Greg said. Names, transactions, threats. Everything. Renee squeezed her hand. If it helps, Dad, we have to get it. But Greg stepped back, pacing. Whoever left that message knows about it. And if they know you hid it, they'll come for us, Jada finished. Greg stopped pacing. No, he said firmly. They'll come for me. Because they assume I already know. His security chief approached from the hallway. Sir, perimeter cameras picked up movement. Someone was on the south side of the property for less than 20 seconds. Dark clothing. Matt. They dropped the envelope and disappeared into the tree line. Greg nodded grimly. They wanted to rattle us. And it worked. Renee shivered. What do we do now? Greg looked between them, a silent promise forming in his eyes. We leave tonight. We're flying to Chicago. Jada blinked. Tonight? Yes, Greg said. We go before whoever's watching realizes we're moving. Renee looked scared but determined. Will they follow us? Greg didn't lie. They might try. But I have more resources than they do. And I'm done letting them stay one step ahead. The private jet hummed quietly on the tarmac, its lights glowing in the cold night fog. Security vehicles surrounded it, forming a guarded perimeter. Jada held Renee's hand tightly as Greg guided them toward the stairs. But before they boarded, Greg crouched in front of them. What you're doing, he said, it's brave. Your father trusted you, Jada. And I trust you too. Jada swallowed. I just want this to end. It will, Greg said. Tonight starts the final chapter. Chicago, 3:17 a.m. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that only came after snow. Streetlights glowed over thin layers of frost. Greg's SUV turned onto a narrow street lined with old brick row houses. This was your neighborhood? He asked gently. Jada nodded. 2 blocks down. Renee pressed her forehead to the window as memories resurfaced. Warm ones of their father carrying them on his shoulders, cold ones of their mother pacing the kitchen late at night, frantic phone calls, whispered arguments. Greg parked a block away. Do you remember exactly where you hid it? Jada hesitated. Yes. In the basement of the abandoned duplex across from our old house. Dad used to check on it sometimes. He said it was neutral ground. No one paid attention to it. Greg nodded. Stay close. Don't leave my side. His security team surrounded them as they approached the rundown duplex. Snow crunched under their boots. The boards over the windows were rotted, and the front door hung crooked. One of the guards pried it open. Cold, stale air drifted out. They moved inside. Jada led them down the creaking stairs. The dim beam of a flashlight carved out shadows on cracked cement walls. It's behind the furnace, she said quietly. There's a loose panel. Greg helped her move aside an old rusted toolbox. Jada pried at the metal panel, fingers trembling. After a moment it popped free. She reached inside. Her hand brushed something soft, then something hard. When she pulled it out, her breath hitched. A small, weathered leather notebook. Renee gasped. That's Dad's. Jada held it against her chest, tears rising. Greg stepped forward, voice low and reverent. This could be everything. Before he could open it, a sharp noise echoed from upstairs. Everyone froze. A single creak. Then another. Greg motioned sharply. Lights off. The basement went dark. Jada felt Renee clutch her arm. Footsteps. Slow. Controlled. Heavy. Coming down the stairs. Greg whispered, "Stay behind me." The stairs groaned under the intruder's weight. Then, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. A voice followed. Cold. Familiar. I knew you'd come back for it. Jada's blood ran cold. Greg recognized the voice instantly too. Jordan Hale. former board member of the nonprofit, former ally of Greg, the man her father had accused of laundering millions. Jada's hands tightened around the notebook. Hale stepped off the stairs, gun glinting in his hand. "You should have stayed quiet," he sneered. "Your father didn't listen. Don't make the same mistake." Greg moved in front of the girls, jaw tight. "This ends tonight, Jordan." Hale smirked. "Oh, it does." Before he could raise the weapon, a thunderous crash shook the basement. Security flooded in from the side entrance, tackling Hale to the ground. The gun skidded across the cement. Hale screamed, cursing, fighting, but he was outmatched instantly. Greg grabbed the girls and pulled them into his arms. "It's over," he whispered. But Jada shook her head. "No, it's not. Not until the truth comes out." Greg nodded slowly. "You're right." He lifted the notebook from her hands and opened it. Inside were dozens of pages of handwritten notes, names, dates, money transfers, threats, coded messages, and a final page with one line written in shaky ink. "If something happens to me, tell my girls I love them. And give this to Gregory Valentine." Jada covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Renee leaned into her, sobbing. Greg closed the notebook gently. "I won't fail him again," he said softly. "I swear to you both, I'll take this straight to the federal investigators. This man and anyone connected to him will answer for what they did." Jada looked up at him through tears. "You saved us." Greg shook his head. "You saved yourselves. Your father trusted you with the truth, and you held on to it, even when the world fell apart." Renee hugged him suddenly, arms tight around his waist. "Thank you," she whispered. He wrapped his arms around both girls, holding them close. They stayed like that for a long moment, surrounded by the remnants of everything they had survived, but also by the first real sense of safety they'd felt in years. National news exploded with the scandal. Arrests were made. Hale and several others faced charges ranging from fraud to conspiracy to murder. Greg's testimony, and the notebook, became the centerpiece of the investigation. And the girls? They stayed with Greg during the trial. Not because they needed protection anymore, but because they were family now. One quiet morning, Jada found Greg on the back porch of the lodge watching the sunrise. She sat beside him. "Dad would have trusted you," she said. Greg smiled sadly. "I hope so." "He would," she said. "We do." Greg placed a hand over hers. "You always have a home here. Both of you." The sun rose higher, bathing the mountains in gold. Renee burst through the door behind them. "Breakfast is ready," she called happily. Jada stood, smiling softly. "Coming." As they walked back inside, Gregory felt something settle deep in his chest. The past was finally buried. The truth was finally free. And the future, for the first time in a long time, felt bright.